Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. We got about 10 people watching us. All right, we got confirmation from Reigning Woman. Good evening to you, Reigning Woman, and thank you for the confirmation. Welcome to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 361. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the security on the community tab. There's a docket in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on so that you can join the panel. When you're in the waiting room, make sure you raise your hand, or else no one will acknowledge you to advance you to the panel. All right. All right, let me share my screen now. All right, this first item on the docket is from foxnews.com. Air Force airmen missing after fall into Gulf of Mexico from C-130 aircraft. Interesting. A U.S. Air Force airman went missing Tuesday after falling from a C-130 aircraft into the Gulf of Mexico off the Florida coast, according to reports. The fall happened during a parachute jump training exercise out of Hurlburt Field, Florida, according to Air Force Times. The U.S. Coast Guard personnel were assisting the Air Force as a search for the airmen got underway in the water about a mile and a half south of Santa Rosa Island, Florida, along the Florida Panhandle. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservative Commission was also assisting in the operation, the station reported. The Coast Guard said the airman, identified only as a staff sergeant, dropped about 1,500 feet into the water and his parachute deployed. Crew members aboard the C-130 initially saw the airman treading water but lost sight of him while making a turn in an effort to pick him up. Responding crews were adjusting their search area based on the currents in the area. Coast Guard Petty Officer Camille Zankowski told the Northwest Florida Daily News. This is interesting. I would have thought that they had all of this deep sea equipment for looking for submarines and whatnot, that they'll be able to find a human, one of their own guys who jumped out of a plane in the location that they know he landed at. He has a parachute, so it's not like the parachute got sucked under too. I mean, they had to know that whether he has a radio on him or some kind of satellite footage. They should be able to see all of that. I find that to be very interesting. But it's not I mean, it's not impossible that he could have been taken down by a bigger fish. You know, he is in the middle of he is in the middle of their neighborhood. So yeah, so it's crazy. It's crazy that something like that would happen. I thought when I initially saw the title that this guy was hanging at the door of the C-130 and just got sucked out of the plane. I thought that's what happened, but I guess not. Apparently he jumped out. So along with the other airmen. So all right, let me get to the next article. All right, next item on the docket is from NBCnews.com. World War II submarine USS Grayback, missing 75 years, discovered off the coast of Japan. Interesting. A World War II submarine that was sunk with 80 sailors on board and has been missing for 3/4 of a century was found, according to an organization dedicated to finding dozens of lost war subs. The USS Grayback was discovered more than 1,400 feet underwater, about 50 miles south of Okinawa, Japan, in June by Tim Taylor and his Lost 52 project team, which announced the finding Sunday. The sub was sunk by a Nakajima B-5N carrier bomber February 26, 1944, during its 10th war patrol, according to a video announcement from the Lost 52 Project. Taylor founded the Lost 52 Project after the first World War II submarine discovery of the USS R-12. The team has found at least 4 other subs and is determined to discover, survey, and create 3D documentation of the final underwater resting places of more than 40 remaining missing subs. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. The Navy did compile a history of the 52 submarines it had lost during World War II with approximate locations of where the vessels sank, according to the New York Times. But in the case of the USS Grayback, it had relied on an incorrect Japanese translation of war records that had one digit wrong in the assumed latitude and longitude of where the sub went down. The USS Grayback left for its final mission from Pearl Harbor on January 28th, 1944, according to the Naval History and Heritage Command. The sub was ordered home in late February with only 2 torpedoes remaining after an attack on a Japanese convoy. The Grayback was slated to arrive in Midway in March, but never arrived and was listed as presumed lost by the end of the month. The Grayback was the 20th most successful submarine during World War II and earned 2 Navy commendations and 8 battle stars for its service. That is amazing that they lost that many submarines and that they're able to identify where they are. Keep in mind that technology was pretty analog back then. So it wasn't like they had a whole bunch of computers and stuff like that to work with. They've only had a lot of human resources to actually do a lot of the legwork that gets done today by computers. So the fact that they lost that many submarines is a clear indication that if you get into a war, high probability you can get taken out very easily. They were only at sea for a month, if at best, before they got taken out. So not knocking anybody who's in the U.S. military or the Navy in particular, but I'm just saying, um, a lot of people say that the United States has this technological advantage. It doesn't take much to sink a submarine, man. Does not take much. I do not want to be on a submarine with in someone else's territorial waters, especially in places like the Black Sea or the Middle East, because you will go missing. There's actually a good movie you guys should actually watch, and I think it's called Hunter Killer with Gerard Butler and Common the rapper, and it's an excellent movie, excellent movie. It's a lot of um 3D involved in it, but definitely something to watch because it involves modern naval warfare between the United States and the Russian Federation, and what possibly could happen in a conflict. You could get taken out very easily. It only takes one shot to take you down, and it may not even come from another submarine. It may come from coastal batteries that that have detected you. Helicopters involved in anti-submarine warfare. Swordfishes, um, which is the Saab plane. Let me show my share the screen real quick. This is a maritime patrol anti-submarine warfare plane. It's called the Saab Swordfish. Saab, the company that makes that once made cars, also makes military um, arms as well. And the Swordfish is basically a private jet turned into a military craft, and it's lethal, very lethal. You can just tell by looking at the picture of what its capabilities are. These are torpedoes, essentially. And this little bubble that you see at the bottom of it is is for sonar. And this piece that where my mouse cursor is at is actually a camera. Has thermal imaging, so they can see right through the water. This is serious business. Actually, let me play the clip real quick because I don't think people really understand the significance of naval warfare and how treacherous it can get. I've never been in the military, so I'm just speaking from a technological standpoint that um, it, regardless of what you think the United States military's capabilities are, other countries have capabilities too. It would suck to be involved in a conflict where you get taken out and no one knows where you are for the next 100 years. As you can see from the image right here, that thing is armed up. All right, that's enough of that. Let me see who's waiting in the waiting room. We got Zove Royalty on the panel. What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on, Mike?
I'm chilling, man. Chilling.
Yo, congrats on the Spartan race, bro.
Oh yeah,
That's what,
thanks, man. Thanks, man. I definitely signed up for the next ones, man. So
yeah, bro. Because I listened to the stream that you had on I think it was on Saturday. So
yeah,
right after, bro, right after you had the race. Yeah,
yeah,
congrats, bro.
yeah.
And you
Thank you, man.
still
Thank
and you still hitting the gym.
you. Yeah, yeah, man. You know, just do a little bit of recovery here and there, man. You know,
Right, right.
the grind don't stop, man.
That's a fact, bro. That's a fact. But but yeah, bro, you're right about like naval warfare is treacherous. And the thing is, we haven't seen a real naval war. Like, I guess you can say the Falkland War was the last real naval was the last war that you saw real naval combat, and it is treacherous because think about it, you're in a boat, it explodes, it sinks, and like, and the thing is, D Raptor would know if he was here. Like
Mhm,
when a ship explodes, you have the fuel, you have the munitions.
mhm.
It's just it's ugly. It's real ugly, and we haven't really seen it. I'm in the modern era, but it's horrific because if a ship, like for example, I mean, to sink an aircraft carrier, I think only Russia and China have that capability, but I don't
Everybody
know.
has that capability. Everybody does.
Mm, a warrior, yeah, you're right, but I mean, so how many people are in an aircraft carrier? Like how many?
5,000 people.
Yeah, so you could have
It's a
at
small
least
city.
boom. So you could have at least like 3,000 people dead, like that, like that or more. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
that's horrific when you think about it. That is real horrific. So yeah, man, and naval warfare is it's no joke.
Yeah, it's bloody. It's really bloody because I mean, in land warfare, you can kind of hide in a foxhole or something. On a aircraft carrier or navy a submarine, you're kind of a sitting duck, man. You know, you're really a sitting duck, and then you got to deal with all the nuclear fallout if it's nuclear powered. So
Yeah, that's the thing too, because I was thinking about all these nuclear powered aircraft carriers. Like, if they sink, what happens to the nuclear reactor? Like, that creates another environmental issue. That's like that adds that adds more to a fucked up situation. Yeah, it's
well,
crazy.
no one has sent there hasn't been a naval warfare in probably the last 35 to 40 years. The last naval warfare fight was between the British and the Argentine military. And the Argentine military actually sank a British ship. So it almost took them out. They were only 24 hours away from taking them out completely, tore them out the frame. The United States stood by and watched them get their asses whooped. Um, and when you really take it into consideration, um, if they're supposed to be NATO allies, I don't think that they're too, I don't think that they're BFF, man. I don't think they're best friends forever. So
Yeah, word. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, we've talked about this before about the Rio Treaty. The reason why the Rio Treaty fell apart back then was simply because the idea of the Rio Treaty is like if one South American, not even one South American, if one Latin American country, any country in the Western Hemisphere is under attack,
mhm.
that they all should join together. But then the U.S. sided with England, and that's when the whole Rio Treaty fell apart. But yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
All right, let me get to this next article. This one is from BusinessInsider.com. Russia may have taken Israel's most advanced missile from Syria and could figure out how to defeat it. The Russian military has reportedly obtained one of Israel's most advanced air defense missiles from the David Sling battery. the Times of Israel reports, raising the possibility that Russia could quickly figure out how to defeat a cutting-edge system designed to destroy ballistic missiles in flight and share that with US and Israeli foes like Iran. Russian military reportedly obtained the missile in July of 2018 when Israel fired it against Russian-made Syrian rockets headed toward Israeli territory. One of the two missiles the Israeli Defense Forces fired at Syria. One was self-detonated by Israeli Air Force when it became clear that Syrian weapons wouldn't reach or breach Israel's border. The other missile reportedly landed intact within Syria, whereas Chinese news agency Sina reported Saturday it was picked up by Syrian forces and handed over to Russia, which is fighting alongside the regime troops under Bashar al-Assad. The David Sling is a medium-range missile interceptor and was built by Israeli company Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and U.S. company Raytheon as a replacement for the Patriot missile battery built to defeat ballistic missiles. Israel first obtained the system in July 17. July 2018 is believed to be the first operational use of these systems, which fires the Stunner missile. Let me bring the going in. It's certainly a concern. If I was at Rafael, I'd be nervous right now. Ian Williams, the Deputy Director of the Missile Defense Project at the Center for Strategic International Studies, told Insider. The concern, Williams said, is not so much that Russia will produce a copy of the system for its own use as other countries might. If Iran captured this thing, we would see an identical system 2 years from now, he told Insider. But if Russia has indeed got its hands on the Stunner missile, it could study the technology and figure out how to defeat the David Sling system, which would be a massive problem for the countries like Poland, where Israel is attempting to sell the system, not to mention Israel itself. If I was Israel, my big concern is that if Russia can get the intelligence to defeat the interceptor to Iran, Williams said. Dmitry Stefanakis, Russian International Affairs Council expert and VAT4 project co-founder, told Insider that Russia could also potentially use the missile to define or refine its own systems, both offensive and defensive. In terms of air defense interceptors, they are no slouches themselves. They do have pretty advanced, very sophisticated interceptors as is. Williams said, citing the S-300, S-400, and S-500 systems. Sina also reported that the United States and Israel requested that Russia return the missile to Israel. However, that effort was unsuccessful. Neither Russia nor the IDF has confirmed reports of the missile coming into Russian possession, according to the Times of Israel. You're not getting that missile back, so you can forget about that, Jack.
Yeah, that's the thing with Russia. When Israel and the United States probably told Russia to bring back, Russia was like, psych, like, nah. But this is interesting because, Israel has always touted the David Sling system, and the reason why they set it up was in case of war with Iran, because the fear that they have is if they go to war with Iran, Iran will fire their missiles, Hezbollah will fire their rockets and missiles, and then the Gaza Strip will fire their missiles, and maybe Syria will fire the missiles. So Israel will be hit on all points, from northern Israel to southern Israel will be hit by rockets and missiles. So they developed the David Sling as a way to be, as a defensive system against that. But with this is a game changer. Like
well, it's not meant so much as to be a defense against Iran. The Patriot missile battery is actually obsolete for what Israel's needs are, right? So you take Palestinians who are under occupation firing these 3-foot makeshift missiles, right? Missiles made out of fertilizer, right? You can go down to Home Depot, buy some fertilizer, pack it in there with some dynamite, and kind of fire and forget. So you point it in a direction, and then it fires off, and it costs you probably $150 to make that missile. You take that against something like a Patriot missile battery, it's kind of useless, because the Patriot missile battery is only 50% accurate according to the I think it's Desert Storm, or Operation Iraqi Freedom, where the Patriot missile battery actually hit only 50% of its targets. So if it's only 50% accurate, then it's kind of useless against anything else that's more advanced, right? So, and something that's a lot cheaper, like a Palestinian Coup De Tat missile that only takes $150 to make, versus a missile that costs a Patriot missile probably costs $150,000, maybe $200,000 at best for each missile. If I'm the Palestinians, if I'm Hezbollah and I'm firing 20, 30 missiles into Israel, that missile system has to calculate which incoming target to actually to put it in acquisition to eliminate. That's expensive, and not only is it expensive, it's inaccurate. If it only hits one out of the 2 times, then that's not really useful. And so the David Sling, let me share the screen, because it's important that people understand what we're talking about here. David Sling is a lot more accurate than the Patriot missile battery, and it's actually a little bit cheaper, but it's still expensive for a small country like Israel to deal with, cheaper incoming threats. That sucks. So that's what I'm saying here, is that Israel needed this as soon as possible, because a fight with somebody like Hezbollah that has 10 to 30,000 ballistic missiles pointed at Israel, you really don't have an opportunity to fight with the Patriot missile system. So this is a lot cheaper and a lot more effective.
Interesting. Yeah, it's and I guess Russia getting this missile, that you know how the Russians are. The Russians are gonna figure it out, how this figure out how the system works, and probably develop countermeasures against it. And who knows, maybe they'll give that intelligence to Iran. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, because Putin is kind of a little annoyed with Israel, with all the fuck shit they've been doing in Syria, with all the bombings and whatnot. Even though that has stopped recently, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll say, yeah, the Russians. Yeah, what's going on, folks? What's going on, fellas?
Chilling. What's going on? The going.
hanging, bro. But I think what you're saying, as far as the Russians coming up with a counter to that, they definitely will, if they may not have one already. But the Russians are very good at countering different types of missile systems and so forth. They're very good at that, and they definitely will have a counter for that. And they're definitely going to put a lot of pressure on Israel, if anything, to kind of start maybe to come to the table and have some level of negotiations. It's a lot of dollars and cents tied up into this with respect to Russia, and it's not within Israel to really push and create the problems that they have in Syria, because they are, the Russians are backing up. People can say what they want, but they are backing up Assad. I mean, it is, they are definitely tacitly backing this guy up. So, and that's really, this is all about energy. These are all about energy issues. So, I definitely see a lot of stuff happening there, and definitely counters to some of what Israel's doing. And I think this is about really pressuring people to the table behind the scenes.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think that Russia would sell the information to Iran. It's not it's not of any use to them because that missile system doesn't exist in Iran, right? Or in Iranian borders. Um, so Iran doesn't really have to worry too much about it. But for Russia, they can add this missile system to their signature maps or the
Yeah, for
signature
sure.
files on their S-500 system, right? Because that's going to be very important. Because keep in mind, surface-to-air missile systems last for a long time. If you look in Syria, they're still using the S-75. That thing was from the 1960s. That's from Vietnam,
Sure.
and it's still
Yeah,
effective. Still effective. Still shooting down Israeli drones and stuff like that.
and a lot of these SAM missiles
Mhm.
that they can use. Some of the stuff is still shoulder fired. They're still up on that. So I mean, it's like what? So yeah, a lot of this stuff is as sophisticated as it might seem to be. You can still use relatively low tech to take a lot of this stuff down.
Mhm.
You can.
Yeah, I would not want to be the Raphael or the Rafael corporation, because now nobody wants to buy that missile system if it's easily compromised and if it's only 50% accurate too, like it is here. The missile fell intact inside Syria. You would have thought that Israel would have dropped their guys in there and picked that sucker up and took off. I don't.
Man, you do that, and you leave an intact missile in there, they're gonna sit back engineer that thing. They're gonna know everything about it.
Yeah.
Yep. And just like Nagone said, like the Russians could use this as leverage over the Israelis to like get them on the table. Yeah, to get them on the table. Like, listen, you all this shenanigans you're doing in Syria and all this stuff you're doing with the Palestinians. If you don't stop this, if you don't get to the table, we can make things real difficult for you.
Well, they already asked for it back, and the Russians basically gave them the finger.
Yeah, they ain't giving it back, man.
Yeah, that's already over and done with. So now it's a matter of they have to replace that whole entire missile battery,
and that takes time and a little extra money.
Yeah,
this is going to put a lot of heat on them. See, at the end of the day, this is dollars and cents. At the end of the day, with the Russians and in those oil leases, this is what a lot of this is about. Israel, in my view, they're just not operating properly, man. They're just not operating properly.
They're doing whatever they can to survive. They have no other place to go.
See, my thing is they could do a lot better by sitting back and negotiating and working out deals. See, the world works on relationships and agreements. That's had and where you run into real problems, and anytime we've seen wars happen and everything like that, it's when those relationships and those agreements break down. And Israel, even though they're a new country per se, they should have a good sense of history. It doesn't make sense to me, the kind of game that they're playing, because they can't win this long. This is not really sustainable long term, and they would do much better by being quite diplomatic, bringing a lot of business in, kind of opening themselves up as a strong manufacturing nation in the Middle East, where people can do business and where people can work, and kind of handle their game that way. That would be the most sensible thing to do, but they're so caught up in their military industrial complex and trying to run that into the ground in a very small country. All the weapons they're gonna create and they're trying to sell, they're gonna get consumed by them. It's very stupid. I mean, I know they were abused by the Germans, and any abused child is going to be an abusive adult. And that's kind of what you have with these people, unless the sickness with them is what I think. And they need to recognize this and get over a lot of this. The game that they're playing is not winnable long term. They have a business infrastructure and a halfway decent political infrastructure where they can actually do quite well in that region without any hostilities. And the other nations around them know that they have at least enough armaments and a strong enough army to protect themselves. So it's not within their interest to be attacking them either. So it's much smarter to do business. To do business, open up the borders, work with people politically and economically, and they would be a much stronger nation that way. They last a lot longer. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, the thing is though, is the way that the way Israel was founded. I mean, it was founded through war. So like their whole so the thing is, Israel always got its way through war. It's like that for them.
They weren't founded on war. There was agreements that helped to bring that country together.
No, I think what he means is it was a hostile takeover, is what he's saying. So,
yeah.
Well, in some respects, but in other respects, no. I mean, they became hostile because you had some knuckleheads who were kind of a little bit out of line, and we helped to quell a lot of what was going on there as well. Our hands were in there. American tanks and American aircraft and so forth were in some of this. We helped it to settle that region for our own interests.
Russia.
Yeah, and so did Russia. We helped exactly. That's exactly correct. So Israel is not like this one nation and these Jews fought everybody by themselves. That's a misnomer. That's actually not exactly true. All right, that just isn't. All right, so we can go back to a large amount of history and talk about it, and we can throw the USS Liberty up in there as well.
Well, they defeated 5 Arab militaries. I would say that's a bit of a conflict, right?
Well, I would say it's definitely a bit of a conflict, but let me ask you this question: is that the militaries that they beat, with what armaments and with what pilots? Let's talk about it. We're in there helping them to do this. Can I get an answer on that? Obviously,
the British.
Okay, and who else?
French.
And the French.
And who else?
Because the United States.
You know that. What were they flying?
P-51s.
And what else were they flying? Let's say in the 19 when the and I call it the oil war in the 70s. What were they flying? What aircraft were they using?
You said the 1970s?
Yeah.
Oh, those are the A4s, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I'll just leave it at that. All right. That's it.
All right. Let me get to this next one. What the hell is going on? All right. This is from truthout.org. International actors have always been the biggest threat to democracy in Haiti. Janine Jackson, the New York Times, chose to headline in October 20th. Excuse me one second. October 20th report, "There is no hope. Crisis pushes Haiti to brink of collapse." The phrase was a partial quote from a source, a despairing young woman in one of Haiti's most difficult areas. And the story's photos didn't lie. People stepping cautiously through the streets full of uncollected garbage, newborns in necessity deprived hospitals, nor did the facts at least 30 killed and hundreds hurt in protests. Schools closed to millions of children, layoffs in those with big jobs, those with jobs going unpaid, roadblocks, blackouts, hunger, and stress in a country in severe crisis. Deeper in the piece was another quote from the young woman's mother, who, in tears, along with her daughter, told the paper, "It's not only that we're hungry for bread and water, we're hungry for development of Haiti." As a point of emphasis, the difference between "there is no hope" and "there is no hope under this system" is crucial. So we should think about how media coverage can hinder rather than help that kind of conversation. We're joined now by Jake Johnson, Senior Research Associate at the Center for Economic and Policy Research and lead author for CEPR's Haiti, Relief and Reconstruction Watch blog. I'm not going to read this whole thing because this is there's actually a story. It's not a story. There's actually a audio of it here. So I'm going to read the first couple of paragraphs. Just to acknowledge, we can't do justice to the history of Haiti here, but I think it's fair to say the more you know of it, the more sense you can make of what's happening today. I wanted to just start with the question of the real scope of or nature of these ongoing and recently escalating protests. It's set up as President Morsi's versus an opposition that wants him out. But you say that's too narrow. It's really bigger or deeper than that. What do you mean? There's been this narrative again that you mentioned that this is a fight between two political sides. And I think that is really taking a far too narrow view of the crisis, which is not just a month old or 2 months old or a year old, but has been building for many years, maybe many decades, right? And this is really a crisis, really a systematic crisis. And I think what people are looking for is not just a change in leadership, not just to change from one politician to another, but real reforms that are going to fundamentally change the system of governance and the economic system that has gone along with it. We've seen the failures of the democratic system, declining participation in elections for more than a decade, and an economic system that simply has produced inequality on a massive scale and failed to address the needs that are so well pointed out in the New York Times article that you mentioned. Let's do some history. We've complained countless times on this show about how elite US media can portray Black and brown countries, and especially those deemed insufficiently pro-US, as uncivilized or backward, or in fancier terms, trapped for years in cycles of political and economic dysfunction. When the roles of outside actors like the US does come in, you need to look alive. So here's this New York Times historical rendering. They say Haiti was once a strategic ally for the United States, which often played a crucial role here. During the Cold War, American government supported, albeit at times grudgingly, the authoritarian governments of Francois Duvalier and his son Jean-Claude Duvalier because of their anti-communist stance. In 1994, the Clinton administration sent troops to restore um, Aristide to power after his ouster as president. But 10 years later, intense pressure from the United States helped push Mr. Aristide out again. Now we can't unpack all of that, obviously, but given that that was the only bit of US-Haiti relations that the story included, and it's more than some stories have included, what are some key things to know about specifically the US role in Haiti and about that story? It's good to see at least some acknowledgement of the important role that the US plays in Haitian politics, right? I think you look back after the fall of Duvalier and the early movement towards democracy, and you had the overwhelming election in 1990 of Aristide, focusing focusing just on that coup that happened after that, just 9 months into his term, and the fact that there were people on the CIA payroll who participated in the coup and participated in the bloody crackdown that followed. You can really see that as a transformative event that really put Haiti off the rails of democracy. And you've seen it further eroding over time. And again, you often look at the past when you're talking about US policy. But I think what's really important in today's struggle and what's happening today is taking a look at the more contemporary intervention of the US, and particularly in the 2010 election, where the US government allegedly fraud on behalf of the government of Rene Prevost and his chosen successor. And Hillary Clinton even came down to Haiti to force the government to overturn the results without any statistical analysis and put Michel Martelly into the runoff election. And I think you can see the political fallout has taken place in the now nearly 10 years since that intervention right there. And I think you're seeing the collapse of that political system that really owes its power and position in power to the intervention of these foreign powers, including the United States. Well, it's interesting talking about today. We don't need to get into how someone at the Times could bring themselves to type the words. The Trump administration has urged respect for the democratic process, but what we are seeing is calls from some folks within Haiti for involvement from the United States and calls from a lot of folks for no involvement from the United States. if we're talking about interventions from the outside world and other than reparations, what sort of involvement, if any, would the majority of Haitians even want from the U.S. or from at the international community at this point? Yeah, I think this is a key question. It looks like a bit of a paradox, right? I mean, how can you denounce intervention at the same time as clearly there's an effort to sway international opinion in the current environment? And I think it actually makes quite a bit of sense. To think that that's straight up hypocrisy assumes that the status quo is that the U.S. is not playing a determinative role or significant role in Haitian politics. I think it's not so much further intervention that is needed, but rather taking their hands off of that system, reducing that intervention to allow Haitians to actually create a path forward for change. So often, international actors in Haiti have been the arbiters or the guarantors of the status quo. We've seen this concept of stability over and over again. I mean, there were 10,000 troops there in the stability mission, but what has the stability brought? And who is the stability for? This is stability for foreign investors, stability for the political and economic elite, stability for the US politicians who don't have to deal with the threat of migration or some crisis becoming a political issue for them. But it hasn't been stability for the majority of the Haitian people. And I think that's really the fundamental misanalysis, if you will, of those international actors in Haiti, is that the stability that they sought has only been of an unsustainable status quo. And I think that system is clearly collapsing right now. All right, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but very interesting perspective, and I'd be interested in hearing Zorotti's opinion on this.
Yeah, everything that this article states is true. I mean, Haitians have known this for a long time, that the one thing, yeah, that's held back Haiti. I mean, people can say it's corruption and all that, but the source of that corruption, the source of that instability, is from the United States. I mean, the core group, the other members of the core group, Canada, France, United Kingdom, Germany, all those countries consistently intervene in Haiti's political system consistently all the time. And they've done this from ever since. So this all started ever since when the United States occupied Haiti back in I forget what year it was, like 1930. It was, they had like a 20-year occupation from like 1920 something to 1940, like right before World War II started. That's when they withdrew from Haiti because World War II was heating up. But what they did was they created a system where where they trained the Haitian military at the time to only serve, not to serve the Haitian people, but to serve U.S. interests. That's why Haiti has so many coup d'etats. And then Duvalier came to power. Duvalier ran on a platform of Black nationalism. The people supported him, but then he sold out. I mean, he created his Tonton coup as a way to be a balance against the army, so he wouldn't get a coup d'etat. I mean, they tried to do a coup d'etat. The country almost went to civil war, but then he sold out. He became pro American simply because he was anti-communist, because he feared communism, which was growing at the time. Communism was real popular, like around the 1950s, right after the Cuban Revolution. There was a chance that Haiti could have been communist, but Duvalier came at the right time, I guess, for U.S. interests, and he stamped that off.
Also, Zoe, just complete in, because you hit it dead, you dead on it. But it hit it also that America promised a lot of economic support and so forth for Haiti, of which Duvalier was promised, and of which the United States, only thing they did was enriched him and didn't do shit for his country.
Yep.
Why don't we speak on that as well?
Yeah, exactly. So all the aid that they gave, the quote unquote aid that they gave to Haiti, went to Duvalier's pockets. And even after his son went down, the U.S., they supported a paramilitary death squad called FRAP. FRAP was basically former Tonton Macoute, former Haitian military, who was killing pro-democracy activists. They were like slaughtering people. Like you can look this up, FROP. And the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency, said, yeah, we supported them, we trained them, we armed them. The guy who's the leader of FROP, he got exiled from Haiti because, you know, the pressure was on him. He got exiled to Haiti, and he's living in Queens to this day. Like he's living in I think he's living in Cambria Heights, Queens. It's crazy. Like he already had a home paid for him and everything. So it's blatant that the United States interferes with Haiti's political system. And what you see right now, these protests are different. Like there's always uprisings in Haiti. There always is throughout Haiti's history, but this time is different because the people can't take it anymore because it's not they've lost trust in the whole political system because this past election was increasingly blatant fraud. The whole issue with the Clintons, like the Clintons have been involved with Haiti since forever. I think Hillary Clinton's brother, I think he owns like a cell phone company in Haiti.
Tony Rodham.
Yeah, he owns like he owns a couple of businesses in Haiti. And the problem too is, and in the Haiti chat that you had a couple weeks ago, there was an article you read that kind of mentioned a little bit about the Arab elites, like the Arab mulatto elites and some of the black elites. Mm-hmm. My dad, whenever I talked to him about it, he said there's these 6 families in Haiti. I mean, I forgot the names of them. I mean, I'll ask him. Yeah, these oligarchs. And these are the Arabs that, you know, the U.S. brought when they occupied Haiti. They came from the Ottoman Empire. They came from the Ottoman Empire.
I know one of them, the Gardere family. Gardere.
Yeah, Gardere, yes.
Mm-hmm. And one of them I went to school with. So know about it very, very well. And what's his name is living in Cambria Heights, Queens, next to not far from my ex-wife used to live, off of 118th and not Jamaica Avenue, but I'm forgetting what the avenue is now. But yeah, living in Queens currently right now.
Yeah,
118th and Hempstead.
Is it Hempstead? I think it's Hempstead. Okay, all right. Okay, that's
right off Hempstead. I know. Well,
that's the.
I live by Eagles my mom. Squared. My mom lives by Belmont Racetrack. And
okay, that's the.
I know the people around there.
MC Squared. Okay, baby. All right. I'm not surprised.
Wrapped in those Queens. Okay.
Yeah, I know Queens quite.
Yeah, bro. I live in Queens from 1989 till about 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I lived in Queens for a while. I was there for a while myself.
Well, you know, the Minister of Defense actually used to run around Queens too, and if we need to pay a visit, Minister of Defense.
Yeah, we got to send a minister. We got to send a Minnesota over there, man.
Yeah, but I'll make this point real quick though. It's like those oligarchs are the problem. They are the biggest problem because they serve the U.S. interests, and those oligarchs in Haiti work hand in hand with the oligarchs in DR, and they do cross business all the time. And you know, the thing is, they only care about enriching themselves. They don't care what the average Haitian goes through. So what you have now is that the oligarchs, along with the United States, they supporting Jovenel Moïse. They're still sticking by him, but it's like the majority of the country is against him. The majority of the country is against him, and you know, for me, I think it's only a matter of time before he has to step down. If not, it could get real ugly for him. That's all I'm gonna say, because it could be for so long that you can keep paying the police, keep paying these death squads, to, keep trying to oppress the people. But the thing is, when the majority is against you, they're gonna get overwhelmed. I mean, the other day, I don't know if you read the story, Mike. There was like this former Haitian American Marine was caught in Port-au-Prince airport carrying guns.
I saw that.
Yeah,
and then they asked him, like, what's he doing here? So I'm here to provide order, like to bring order to Haiti. And I'm like, and this happens consistently. A couple years ago, there was like these 3 white dudes from Florida came with AR-15s or whatever. Like this consistently keeps happening.
But armaments have been coming in and out of Haiti for years since revolution. armaments have been coming in and out of Haiti for years. This is
Mm-hmm.
nothing new about this whatsoever. My workout partner, who I work out, my man Pat, Patrick, he is from Haiti. He's Haitian all day, and we talk about this. So this is a real big issue. The big problem that you have in Haiti right now is the fact that this government is sitting here and people are not working. You got people not working. You got people there who are supposed to be working. Their jobs are off. People are getting torn out of the frame. He just had one of his aunts come over for a short while to take care of his kids because she's not working over there. And that's what's going on. People are not working, man. People are not working. The government's not helping them provide them anything. And jobs and these things are real short. People are restless. They're going nuts. And that government is going to go down if you continue people who are at this level who are basically being starved out. It's not a good scene. I mean, that's what you're looking at right now on the ground. And I don't think this government is sustainable the way things are moving currently.
And it's not. And the quick point I'll make is like, the problem is with these oligarchs, they continue to enrich themselves, consistently.
Yes.
But the problem is you're not gonna have social cohesion, because when you have a whole bunch of people starving and very few who have everything, there's not going to be social cohesion. And one day those people are going to lift their eyes up and point to those who are living in the mountains, because in Haiti, a lot of those elites, they have their houses in the mountains. They're going to be like, yo, let's march up there. And that's when things will get real ugly. For me, that's the only solution. Like, these oligarchs, they got to go. They got to go.
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think it's fairly inevitable. Aristide had to run with his tail between his legs. And this guy's in here now doing the same, rolling with the same thing. I know a guy over there he has a can company, and I think Rodham is one of his investors. I believe that Hillary's brother is one of the investors there, and this guy's taking out about $4 or $5 million a year. And he's got a few people working for him, but that's about it. He's hoarding everything, and he lives in this mansion outside of Port-au-Prince with big guards and gates around and stuff. And he's arming himself up for war currently because he thinks that this is what's coming down. But yet he's got a company that's making a lot of money where he could actually have a fairly beneficial effect in his region, in his area, with the kind of money he has. He doesn't need that much money to have people doing halfway decent. He could expand and open up his company a little bit more and build a few more plants around, and actually kind of help to spread the wealth a little bit. These guys are not thinking this way. So
this thing can never
Haiti,
go down without.
You're essentially almost like a billionaire.
This thing can never happen. Go ahead, Naval.
No, I was just saying, if you're making $4 to $5 million a year in Haiti, you're essentially almost like a billionaire. That's literally that kind of money you have. So these guys, they're thinking very poorly, man. Just to think that Haiti became really more impoverished from the standpoint of having to pay reparations to the French, of which they never should have agreed to, in my view. That's how I really feel about it. But since that happened and the country really got caught up paying back the Europeans whose heads they cut off and left on the beaches. I would have never paid those some bitches back, and I would never let the government come in there and put these rapacious guys in there who just fucking the country over. I mean, it's just been going on now for the better part of 200 years, and it just doesn't make sense to me, man. It doesn't make sense.
And the story about the reparations is, like, when you look at it deeper, I mean, the guy who was in charge of Haiti at the time, his name was Boye. He was a mulatto.
Yep.
So he had like some love for France or whatever. And the thing is, like, when the French brought their ships, to Haiti, said, listen, pay up or we're gonna tear your ass up. A lot of Haitians were like, yo, we're ready for war. A lot of Haitians say, yo, we beat you once, we can beat you again. But Boye, he was a coward. He was like, oh, we can't fight the French again, blah blah blah. And the mulattoes of those times, what I'm saying, the mother was a slave, the father. So they want that, the love from the father, So it's like,
Well, how do some of my boys call them? They call them the yellow niggas. Pardon the expression. That's what they call them, the yellow niggas. The yellow niggas took over and they came in with a colonial mindset, and it's obscene. And it's just what's happened over there. It didn't have to go down that way. And as far as I'm concerned, when I look at Haiti in that region, the revolution was never completed. and it's still going on now.
Yeah. And the thing is, and I've told you this before, Mike, because China's biggest embassy in the Western Hemisphere is in DR. So the Chinese are looking at this. They see an opportunity. I think the Chinese are just waiting to see what happens, and then they could come in because there's a lot of anti-Americanism in Haiti.
Well, they have strategic partnerships all throughout the Caribbean anyway, so it's just a matter of leveraging. I mean, we don't really know what's inside that big ass embassy anyways. You don't really need an embassy that big, unless you're doing some other surveillance. They could possibly be using that that embassy to be spying on Florida in the Gulf of Mexico, looking at all of U.S. radio traffic and stuff like that. So there's the variety of reasons as to why they would have an embassy that big inside DR. DR needs a lot of money. They are, completely dependent on tourism, and they need Chinese investment. And unfortunately, the United States has not done anything for any of these countries in the Caribbean at all. I mean, you can just see how ravaged they are by the hurricanes.
Well, the Chinese are trying to get into Haiti as well.
Well, yeah, they are. They already have their guys on the ground. There's already their guys on the ground doing a lot of labor. So
I mean, the Chinese are pretty smart.
What's happening in Haiti could never happen without the average Haitian, Black Haitian, especially taking part of it. Seriously. Mm-hmm. Those are the people who work for all these Arabs. I mean, they might not be the banker for the Arab or but they work in the house. It's like Black people in slavery. You had a mammy who used to take care of the kids and even watch the master's back. And she protected the master. When there was an uprising, she would tell the master, I heard a story about they're talking about uprising in the huts. And that's what's happening in Haiti.
That is so true. That is so true. I saw a Brazilian movie. I was in Brazil. It was all Portuguese. I was watching a Brazilian movie. The kid on your point, it was crazy. It was about it was a Brazilian movie now in Brazil. And you had this Bedouin. She was in the shack with two white boys banging them simultaneously. She was grunting in between getting icy hot stunted out. Mm-hmm. She started to talk about the uprisings or potential, thought processes that many of the slaves had on the plantations. And she was naming names and talking about it in between downstrokes with these dudes. And they were actually highlighting this on a Brazilian movie. And I was like, look at this shit. They just put this shit on camera. Around. So that's what went on down there in South Am, and also went all the way up over here in the Caribbean. That's exactly what was going on. And you guys know that's still going on to this very day. And so many, but that is exactly it. DE, damn, it's terrible to have to bring that up, and that's a very unfortunate fact.
Let me get to this next article from the AsianTimes.com.
It's factual. It plays a big part in what's going on.
Oh yes. All
right, let me get to this next article from the AsianTimes.com. Is Russia gas a Trojan horse into Europe? The construction of Nord Stream 2, a natural gas pipeline connecting Russia's Leningrad region with northern Germany via the floor of the Baltic, is almost complete, but controversies hover over the project. So, officially, Nord Stream 2, which will come online in early mid 2020, will provide additional gas to Europe and optimize transportation costs. Critics, however, are suspicious. They suggest that the Kremlin is, in fact, deploying a dual-pronged below-the-radar strategy that will financially impact Ukraine while also driving a wedge into European energy security. Last week, Russian state gas giant Gazprom received long-awaited permission to build one of the last sections of the Nord Stream 2 through Denmark's territorial waters. Designed to replicate the already operational Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 will consist of a pair of parallel pipelines running along the floor of the Baltic Sea with an annual capacity of 55 billion cubic meters. Meanwhile, Turkstream, another Gazprom-owned pipeline running through the Black Sea, connecting southern Russia with Turkey, and then continuing through Bulgaria and Serbia and into Hungary, is set to go operational at some point in 2020 with a capacity of 31 billion cubic meters. The two pipelines are core components of Gazprom's increased supply of gas to capital-rich, energy-poor Europe. The Russian giant already supplies about 40% of total European imports, following through three existing routes: Nord Stream 1, a pipeline through Ukraine, and a third through Belarus. Given the capacities of existing routes, questions hang over the new pipelines. As pointed out by Dmitry Marchenko, lead analyst for oil and gas at Fitch, the extent infrastructure is enough to meet Europe's current gas demands. Even if Europe's demand for Russian gas increases, it won't be enough to justify all these supply routes working at full capacity, he told Asia Times. Gazprom, in fact, is carrying out an optimization program, which by 2020 should reduce the Ukraine routed supply down to about 10% of current levels. What then is the rationale behind the new capacities while dismantling other capacities elsewhere? Gazprom CEO Oleksiy Miller would answer that Nord Stream 2 is 1.6 times more cost efficient than the Ukrainian route, and he has every reason to talk about upsides. Gazprom stocks have been surging since the announcement that Denmark had greenlighted Nord Stream 2, reaching their highest value since August 2008. So 266 rubles currently on, or at least according to this article, at 266 rubles as of November 8th. The company is now worth $98.8 billion in market capitalization. However, those looking closely at Gazprom's numbers are raising their eyebrows. Critically, Gazprom's official financial estimates fail to include the huge cost of on-land infrastructure connecting the pipelines in the West with natural gas fields located deep inside the vast Russian landmass. Factoring the element in, real costs exceed official figures by a hefty 60% for Nord Stream 2 and by a whopping 160% for Turkstream, according to estimates by analysts at Russia's biggest commercial bank, Sberbank CIS. Considering these numbers, the rationale for neither Turkstream nor Nord Stream 2 appear to be economic. The new pipelines mainly have political goals. Punish Ukraine, says Kurthikin. If he is correct, it wouldn't be the first time Russia has used state company Gazprom as a tool to leverage against Ukraine and Europe by raising gas prices or reducing supplies in times of worsening diplomatic relations. Often, Gazprom's decisions are not based on profit-oriented calculations, but on the state's political interest, Marchenko said. Since Moscow's relations with Kyiv hit historic lows following the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the ongoing secessionist war in eastern Ukraine, Russia has been applying steady pressure to the former Soviet state, whose fragile economy is heavily dependent on the annual $3 billion in transit tariffs from Russia. It is not just about Ukraine. In addition to depleting Kyiv's coffers, Nord Stream exacerbates divisions among EU states, which some allege is Russian President Vladimir Putin's divide and rule strategy for Europe. The main beneficiaries of Nord Stream 2 will be Germany, which will profit from gas transit fees in Austria, the final destination of the new gas supply route, strengthening that country's position as Europe's key gas hub. And Hungarian President Viktor Orban has been recently said joining Turk Stream is a priority. If Russian gas comes through only through Ukraine, that is not good for Hungary, he said in a recent meeting with Putin. The losers will be Poland, the Baltic states, and Slovakia, which will be deprived of transit tariffs as the Ukrainian route progressively loses significance. It may be no coincidence that Moscow considers the Baltics and Poland highly sensitive NATO bulwarks on Russia's flank. Adversaries of Nord Stream have found an ally in the U.S., a nation with dual interests. It is a lead player in NATO and also seeks to increase its sales of its own liquefied gas to Europe. Some U.S. senators have waved the stick of sanctions at European companies participating in the construction of the pipelines. In response, Berlin has warned Washington not to meddle. Matters related to European energy policy must be decided upon in Europe and not the United States. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said during a reception organized by the German Committee on Eastern European Economic Relations earlier this year. So I don't want to read too much into this, but it's a really interesting and accurate article. The problem, you see, what Russia could do is wait until wintertime and freeze the European Union out and say, we're not supplying gas to you until you get your NATO guys off my doorstep. That will end everything. Russians do not want, Europeans do not want to freeze in the middle of winter because they got some stupid military sitting on Russia's doorstep. Would it be inhumane? Possibly. Do the Russians give a fuck? Not really. If I was a Russian diplomat, that would be my strategy. Let them freeze in the middle of winter and let's see how they do. Get your military off my doorstep and I'll keep supplying more gas to you, or we're going to jack up the cost. And you could do it two ways. You can either go through the United States and get their expensive gas that's not going to be consistent, or you can deal with us and get your military off my doorstep. How about that?
Basically on some like you either get down or lay down type of situation. Yeah, but the Russians know what they're doing with this whole Gazprom, with this whole Nord Stream shit, because they're using it as because the way Russians work, they want leverage. Once they have leverage, they're gonna exercise it completely. And you know, when you and I've said this before, when you look at Russia's history, Russia has been invaded numerous times. So when they see NATO troops near their borders, they get a little leery because they're like, okay, what are you doing? They're like, what are you guys up to right now? Like, we don't want these troops near our borders. And the United States promised at the end of the Cold War that they wouldn't do it, but that they broke that promise. So this is Russia's way of getting back. I think you will see Russia doing this probably in the coming years when they will say, okay, listen, if you're not gonna halt NATO expansion, we're gonna have you guys freeze in the winter. And it gets real cold in Germany. It gets real cold in France, you know, and all those countries too, like in Eastern Europe as well. So the Europeans are going to face a real tough situation. And on top of that, the European Union is divided too. So half of them will probably get along with this, and the other half, since they're US puppets, they're going to try to resist Russia. So it's going to be real interesting when this thing goes down.
I'm telling you, a cold bed and a cold shower, man, kind of wakes everybody up. So,
I mean, no more icy hot. I mean, no icy hot stunners. You know what I'm saying?
It would be more like icy hot bratwurst for them. All right, let me get to this next article from AlJazeera.com. Turkey's military operation in Syria, biggest winners and losers. 1 month after Turkey launched its operation in northeast Syria, an uneasy truce prevails, but what comes next? In the month since Turkey launched a military operation to drive Syrian Kurdish forces back from its border, northeastern Syria has settled into an uneasy truce. Turkish troops control a 120-kilometer, 75-mile strip of territory between the towns of Tal Abiyad and Ras Al Ain in northeast Syria. The remaining border zone that had been controlled by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces is patrolled by Russian and Turkish soldiers working together. The Syrian government forces have also moved into the region to establish themselves in towns and villages. It's ceded to Kurdish forces early in the stage in Syria's 8-year war. The biggest winner has been the Syrian government and President Bashar al-Assad, said Kamal Alam, a London-based military analyst specializing in Syria and Turkey. He was able to get more territory in Kurdish areas in just a few weeks than he had in 5 years. Turkey's Operation Peace Spring was precipitated by a decision by the United States, which had been allied with the SDF in the fight against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant group, to withdraw its forces from the frontier with Turkey. The Turkish military and its Syrian militias crossed the border on October 9th as President Recep Tayyip Erdogan pledged to drive the SDF fighters away from his border and establish a safe zone to house some of the 3.6 million Syrian refugees in the country. The SDF, dominated by the People's Protection Units, YPG, labeled terrorist by Ankara because of its ties to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, which has waged a 35-year war inside Turkey that has led to tens of thousands of deaths. Feeling abandoned by the United States, the SDF turned to the Syrian government for help as the US agreed to a ceasefire with Turkey that would allow Kurdish forces to withdraw 30 kilometers from the border. Erdogan also agreed to a deal with Russia, al-Assad's main backer, alongside Iran, for Turkey to keep control of the area it has seized and for Syrian government and Russian forces to take over the remaining 30 kilometers, deep border area. Meanwhile, it has agreed that joint Turkish-Russian patrols would monitor up to 10 kilometers from the frontier. Turkey and Russia carried out their third joint patrol on Friday. However, Erdogan has complained that neither Russia nor the US have honored their commitments to remove the SDF from the 30-kilometer zone amid bomb attacks and sporadic fighting. As well as allowing al-Assad's forces back into the region, the agreement also cemented Russia's role as the preeminent international power in Syria, according to Alam. If there was any doubt that Russia was the final arbiter in not just Syria but the wider Middle East, that finalized it, he said. Russia's growing influence in Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, and obviously Syria is evident. Turkey has no other option than to listen to Russia because, despite being a NATO member, there hasn't been any support coming from NATO on this. Where have we heard that before? Ali Bakir, an Ankara-based political analyst and researcher, said the very volatile situation on the border meant it was too early to draw conclusions on the results of Turkish operation. Turkey is not totally satisfied about keeping the YPG from its area of operations, he said. There are still some elements close to the border, and there is a possibility that they are preparing a long-term military engagement against Turkey. There are still question marks about exactly where the regime forces are and what they can do. Moscow and Ankara agreed on some general points, but they need further technical agreements on the ground. Turkey's operation, its third in northern Syria since 2016, came as Ankara deepened its ties with Moscow and drifted further from the west. The U.S. retreat from northeast Syria and the growing footprint of Damascus, Moscow and Tehran in the region will threaten Ankara's long-term strategic interests in the Middle East, said Aykin Erdemir, a former Turkish MP and now senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington. Interesting. Mitat Salikpala, a professor of international relations at Istanbul's Kadir Has University, said Turkey, Iran, and Russia, the three powers that launched the Astana process in early 2017 to find a solution to Syria's long-running conflict, had increased their influence in the war-torn country. What they started, the Astana process, they wanted to create a situation they would control, and that is what they have achieved. He said they have created a situation where they have more influence than the United Nations in terms of what happens in Syria. Russia in particular is happy because they are working with Turkey, whereas Turkey's relations with the US are getting worse and worse. Last month, US politicians voted to sanction Turkey following its Syria operation and passed a resolution declaring the mass killings of Ottoman Armenians during World War II as genocide. This follows disputes over Ankara's purchase of S-400 missiles from Russia, Washington's support for the YPG, and the presence in the U.S. of Fatah Gulen, a cleric Turkey holds responsible for 2016 coup attempt. I think we're finished with this, but this is interesting because there's a few key points here that I find interesting. Is that Russia is definitely the security guarantor of Syria and quite possibly the whole Middle East at this point, at least at some point. However, what I see happening right now is that, all right, let me take the miscellaneous part. Kim Kardashian is an Armenian. Kim Kardashian has a security clearance to the White House currently. She has also been seen inside Armenia, and now with this new revelation that the United States is going to support the reparations and sanctioning of Turkey over the Ottoman Armenian genocide by the Ottoman Empire. This is a very strategic move in Washington. So what they're trying to do is drain Turkey's not just their wallets, but also their political accreditation on the global stage, where no one wants to do business with them because they're a hot potato.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Because well, that's what the United States does. Like, they try to basically put a stranglehold on your economy until you get online. They basically what D. Rap that said in the past. They use the dollar as a weapon to say, like, listen, you either get down or lay down. So I think the problem with that strategy, though, is that Turkey has a robust economy themselves, and if you push Turkey away, which is a major NATO ally, and Turkey has a pretty large military, fairly large military, and if you push them to Russia and China, that's going to shift the balance of power in all the Middle East. Then the US would have lost the Middle East forever. I'm at that point, because you try to antagonize them by doing sanctions. I mean, basically, the next article says it, like, the U.S. is basically telling Turkey, like, yo, you either don't buy the Russian missile system, or we're gonna destroy your economy. So the problem with that strategy is you're gonna alienate the Turks, and the Turks are very prideful people, very nationalistic, and if they feel like, you know what, fuck this shit, we're going to go to the other side, that's going to be a chess move for Russia and China, because despite everything what the U.S. is trying to say about Turkey and all that, Turkey is a very important ally. I mean, they control the Dardanelles, they control the what's that other straits that's right there, the Dardanelles, and I forgot the name of the other one. So they control that, and you know, Turkey is connected. It's basically the bridge between Europe and Asia. So antagonizing the Turks could backfire on the United States, because they need Turkey.
Why do you think they need Turkey?
In the sense of, because I'm looking
they're part of NATO.
And they're the second largest military in NATO. If you lose that, and Turkey goes into the side of Russia and China, that's a major loss. That's a major loss.
No,
You
I
know?
didn't hear Nagone. I didn't hear Nagone.
No, I was saying, you know, because they're part of NATO. I'm thinking, you know, Turkey is playing a fairly dangerous game here. I think Turkey has got their eyes on something a little bit different that might come within the within the crosshairs of the United States, which could be highly problematic because of their close position here. I think they're playing an exceedingly funky game, a very dangerous one as well. And as I said, I mentioned, I thought they were trying to re-anneal the old Ottoman Empire in so many ways. And I really think that this is what they've got on their minds. And they do have a very strong military, and I think they're about to play this thing out. So I'm very concerned about what's going on here. And I think, you know, the views of Ataturk and his crew back when they started to form Turkey back in the day, and try to make it more of a, you know, instead of just a religious state, but kind of a secular country, they were formed with their views of re-annealing their old empire. And I really feel that this is what's going on. And I have a tremendous amount of mistrust about what's going on with Turkey. And they're in a very, very, very interesting position to play a very interesting game. And they're seeming to be somewhat rather adroit politicians. Erdogan and his crew seem to be rather adroit right now, but and they've got a very large Muslim sector in that country, so they've got a potential to do a lot of damage. I think this is a big problem, and
I don't think
I think anybody who's politically astute may have to deal with this. I don't think the military may not be, but we don't know. We don't know yet, Mike.
I'm saying that the Kurds have been giving them from an asymmetric standpoint, they have been stomping all over the Turks, which is why the Turks want them away from the border.
The Kurds are a problem because they're inside the country as well. So when you have that going on, and the PK, excuse me, and their group, they're a problem. I mean, they've been around and they've been very effective in fighting for a long time. This is not just a group that's come up over the last few weeks or something. They've been around for decades, been very effective, and they're inside of Turkey as well. So that asymmetrical warfare, as you know, and developing fifth columns and this kind of stuff inside the country are some of the most difficult fights you'll have to face. And then they're effective. You know, they're effective. Turkey's going to have to play a game, and in my views, have to cut a deal with them as well. And I think that's kind of where they're trying to move currently, but we have to watch this very closely. I'm just very suspicious of the moves going on there, and I'm just taking my cues. I could be wrong, fellas. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying this is just what I'm seeing based on history and going way back to the Crimean conflict and looking at what's going on now. My sense of history is keen, and I don't think I'm off on this, but I could be. But anyway, go ahead, fellas. That's just my take on it. I don't know how anybody else feels.
That war that you see going on between Turkey and the Kurds, that's going back to ancient Egypt here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a long,
it's going back a long time, bro.
The Hittites are the Turks.
Exactly. I brought it up. Yeah.
The Hittites are the Turks. Those are the ones that ruled Egypt, Israel, and part of Assyria during just before Imhotep, I think it was, and lasting for
Hotep.
Centuries. That war that you see going on there is a long one, and nobody's going to stop it anytime soon.
Mhm.
They started up as partners really in Turkey, and then they start fighting each other for control, and then one side sided with the Egyptians, and one side now sided with the Israelis. I don't know if you guys know about that part, the Kurds,
Yes.
because a lot of them are actually ancient Sephardim,
Hmm.
which is the original Israelite, not the other people that you see there now.
Yeah.
So this war is involved in a lot. There's a lot of stuff involved in this war that the papers don't talk about.
Hmm. Yeah. Because the state of Israel wanted to give the Kurds political representation in Syria if they lopped off a piece of the country. The other aspect is that the oil that they were smuggling out was being sent to Israel. The third aspect is that the Turks suspect that many of their armaments are Israeli made. ATGMs and surface-to-air missiles could possibly be coming from Israel to shoot down Turkish jets and take out their tanks, which is what they've been doing.
That Israel believes that all the materials, the water, everything, the Bible says that everything in that area belongs to Israel, and that's what these people, the Zionists, are fighting for.
Mhm.
And basically, the reason why Israel is so big on Kurdish separatism, because if there's a Kurdish state, you'll lop off a piece of land from Turkey, from Syria, from Iran, from Iraq. So basically, their traditional enemies would be weakened. So that's the gist of it all for Israel's side. Why they're so supportive of the Kurds.
The only thing that they have to do, the Israel have to do after that, is take Iraq and Jordan, and they have from Mediterranean to the Great Sea, from the Great Sea to the Red Sea.
Mhm.
That's it. It's over. Saudi Arabia is already gone. That's the way it is.
Mhm.
This is a big political thing that is hidden under so many layers that people that see what's going on in the fringes and don't know.
And let me
And-
go ahead.
And the point that I wanted to make to clarify is why the U.S. needs Turkey is because you have to look at it on the map where Turkey is. You know, you have the Bosporus and you have the Dardanelles. Like, if Turkey gets closer to Russia, I mean, that's been Russia's dreams for centuries to be able to get some quick access to the to the Mediterranean. Like that's been the biggest dreams, and the reason why the old British Empire supported the Ottoman Empire was to block Russia from navigating a warm water port. Like, that's been, I mean, it's crazy. It's like when Nagon says, like, when you look at all the anti-Russian foreign policy that we see today from the West, it's been carried over from hundreds and hundreds of years. It's the same strategy. Never let the Russians get a warm water port, ally with Turkey, because the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus is
Very much so. Very good. Very good.
strategic.
Well-
It's very strategic. So if they lose Turkey, that's a major win for Russia, because that's
Well,
what.
they also have to still deal with Ukraine. You know that the British are building out a naval port right in the lower half of Ukraine right now for the US. So this is not, if all else fails with Turkey, they'll still have Ukraine, which is what they're putting their hopes on and putting their money into. They don't plan on leaving Ukraine for quite some time. So if that's going to be the case, and if all speculation goes accordingly, that the naval port will be built by late 2022, they'll probably care less about what Turkey has to say or what Turkey's interests are.
And yeah, so that's true. I just think like the Russians know that the Ukrainians are not about that life. That they don't want that they don't want that smoke with Russia. I mean, Putin has said that if there's war between Russia and Ukraine, that they'll get into Kiev within days. Like the Ukrainian military is a mess. I think before that happens, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. That the Russians will probably teach Ukraine a lesson before that happens.
No,
Yeah,
the Russians
you're
gonna
right.
build a port in
The-
Caribbean.
I just want to say
Russian
something.
Chinese are going to build a port in the Caribbean. You can
They have two
guarantee
islands they acquired from Venezuela.
You can guarantee that.
Yeah, I'm thinking the Ukrainian military is pretty weak, and you know, I don't know if you guys have seen it. They've also been inundated with a lot of these kind of right wing, kind of racists who are kind of Ukrainian nationals, and they don't think these guys have a lot of discipline.
Well,
I don't. Yeah, exactly. I don't think that they would do well against a very well organized military force like Russia could put together. I think they could just, you know, dispatch some of their more elite troops, Spetsnaz, and some of the other key players that they have there, and I think they could wax them out pretty quickly. I would think.
Well, they won't make it that far. They won't make it that far
Yeah,
without European powers getting involved in that.
So that's
you
what
talking about Ukrainian. Yeah.
No, I'm saying Russia going into Ukraine would suck in European powers like Poland and Latvia and the rest of those.
I mean, the Russians were already there, though, Mike.
What do you mean?
The Russians were kind of already there.
What do you mean?
The Russians were in the Ukraine as far as invading, in my view.
Invading what?
You talking about? Did you follow the events that were happening in the Ukraine about 2-3 years ago with respect to Russia kind of going in and kind of destabilizing the government, having some real issues going over there? Where they were saying Russia was going to invade the Ukraine. Are you saying you're not knowledgeable of that?
No, what I'm saying is you're saying they're going to invade, but I'm saying what are they going to invade? Because they already have separatists in the eastern provinces, so they don't need to invade anything.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to keep the right-wing nationalists from coming in closer to their borders, which is what they're worried about. So they don't need to invade anything. What I'm saying is if Russia drags himself into the Ukraine fully immersed, you're going to drag in NATO states like Poland and the rest of the neighboring states like Estonia and Latvia. They're going to come right in there too.
And you think they'll create a big problem and that they'll be able to hold Russia back?
The Ukrainian government has agreements with NATO. That's what the conflict is about. They have agreements with NATO. They've been training with NATO. They have a whole entire military framework with NATO. Let me pull this up. So
in essence, we're going to have
World War III.
So in essence, we're going to have a NATO force in it.
The objective was to have Ukraine join NATO through the EU partnership. That's why Putin made the statement that if Ukraine joins NATO, then all bets are off. Right? So that's what the conflict is about. Ukraine really, and that's what the article we just read about these Nord Stream pipelines was to starve the Ukrainians out to the point where they have no more financial resources. And the EU, the European Union, does not want to take on a basket case like the Ukraine that really does not add anything to them. Militarily speaking, NATO would make a lot of sense for them. But if Russia is saying that Ukraine joining NATO is a no-no, and if they do that, we'll resolve that issue ourselves by going in. You're going to drag in all of those NATO states. Let me just pull this up real quick.
And this is the reason why, like, to get back into Turkey, is why the U.S. and the U.S. and a lot of the European countries are just using sanctions, because their thinking is maybe if we starve out Turkey, maybe we destabilize their economy. There's protests, overthrows the government, and then we can get a friendly government in Turkey. So I mean that's what they've always been doing. Just
it's it's my belief that like I was looking to say before, that even you have Estonia, Latvia, Poland, they couldn't do shit against a well trained moving Russian army coming through there if they wanted to. I don't think they could. I don't think they could do jack. I don't think we could stop them.
The point isn't about stopping them. The point is to create a catastrophe for Russia.
Right. I do get that. I do get exactly what
you know what I'm saying. You light a brown paper bag with some doo-doo in it, and Putin comes out to stomp it, and he steps his foot with a whole lot of shit while it's on fire. That's a bad move for him, man. You know, he threatens to go into Ukraine, but the idea of going into Ukraine would be equivalent to that, trying to put out a fire of a bag of shit.
Exactly.
So yeah. So you see, saying you're saying overall it's not within his interest to really do that.
Wait it out is a strategy. Wait for the pipelines to be developed, let the Ukraine suffer, and let them freeze overnight. Because at some point they're going to be very dependent upon Gazprom anyways for their energy. And all Gazprom has to do is cut off the spigot, let them freeze, and then they'll come to the negotiation table.
All right. That strategy, I would say, is definitely be preferred. Okay, all right. Well, someone's saying somewhat of the same thing, but I'm following you. I was just saying, I think if they did want to step in the bag of shit, I don't think it would be that big of a problem for them anyway. That's really how I see it. I could be wrong, but all right, fair enough.
Well, the key thing that Mike is saying, like, it could spiral way out of control, because if Russia gets into Ukraine, then you have Poland, Latvia, and all those countries getting involved. Then if shit gets real bad, then you have possibly the rest of Europe getting involved. Then you probably have the United States, and then next thing you know, you have World War III over a basket case.
That's what I'm saying. That
the
Polish president. The Polish president said that if Russia goes into the Ukraine, that Poland will invade. Whether Poland has their might to do so doesn't matter. It's just the Article 5 that Russia is worried about. Because if Poland is a wild card in terms of a conflict, would Germany allow Poland to fall if there is a conflict? Because then that means that Russia would move right in onto their borders. They don't want that sort of conflict spiraling out of control. Neither do the rest of the surrounding countries.
As of right now, in the overall, I'm gonna have to agree with that.
Yeah, they don't want that because remember, Germany and Poland have unresolved issues.
Yeah, they do.
Latvia and Romania are both NATO partners now. So you take that into consideration. We know that the U.S. has moved a lot of equipment recently in the last 9 months into Romania, into Bucharest. So the strategy that I've heard in the last few months is that they're anticipating a conflict. If there is a conflict inside Ukraine, that they would have fast attack vehicles to go in and actually resolve that issue, or even to meet it head on. Now I'm zooming into this so that people can see that there is a port, a warm water port. Let me see, that's interesting enough that Google Maps won't identify this as Russian territory. But here in this area right here, there is a naval port being built for the Americans by the British and the Canadians for the Navy. They've already sent 2 ships up there in the last 9 months, and from what I understand, and it's probably more going on than we really know. You give the Americans access to this kind of becomes irrelevant. So I'm just making that point so that people understand the the context of what I'm saying. That Russia won't pull themselves into this to get all of this. It's just not worth it to them.
So
Okay.
the Russians
All right.
are playing the long game, basically.
Yeah, play the long game. That's what the
Yeah, they're gonna play the long
article
game,
was
yeah.
saying. That's what the other article is saying about the Nord Stream pipelines. Reroute them for political reasons, and then let the Ukraine suffer, because as it stands right now,
Right. Freeze
the Ukraine
them out.
owes
Yeah.
$10 billion in back payments for energy that they have not paid, and they can't afford to pay it either because they have no more industry, because the Chinese have taken all of their engineers and scientists back into Beijing to go work on nuclear and missile technology and rocket technology. So they have a brain drain on top of the fact that they have no industry anymore.
Yeah, it's a function of money. Yeah, it's a money thing with them. That's true. Yeah.
If you look at that situation clearly, that's the kind of move that China makes. That's a Chinese move. It's like the patient go game, you know. Instead of going head on, they encircle you. It's not like chess. They encircle you and make you so you can't move.
Right.
And then they walk away and leave you there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good job, Mike. Good job, man. Good job on that. Nice.
All right. I'm going to skip this next article.
There's a coordinated effort between China and Russia to kind of to wear down the U.S. to a point where they're so stretched out and broke that a war, even if they said we want to fight a war, it wouldn't make any sense. It would be it's like
it won't be economically feasible. It'll
Right.
be damaging from that perspective, which is kind of a war itself, you know. Yep.
Oh yeah.
That's why they had to get rid of Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is all up in the Ukraine with Sloboda.
Yeah, he's trying to raise. He's trying to raise a all white army, all that kind of crap. Yeah, he's bugging over there.
Far right millennials in there going ape shit with their little insignias. Organize, and he's been in Greece, he's been in Italy, he's been in Portugal, he's been in a couple other states as well, organizing, you know, these guys to go into the Ukraine and actually put up a fight against the Russians.
So you could say they're right-wing jihadists, foreign fighters.
I would say so. I would say so. You know, he's been in Latin America.
I think so.
Recently. He was in Brazil. He was in Argentina. He was also in not Chile. I forget the other state that he was in Latin America, but I can't remember right now. But
Uruguay, he went everywhere in South America.
Oh yeah, okay, you're right. You're right about that. He did go all over the place, but yeah, he's organizing. He's organizing. Meanwhile,
they kicked him out of Italy. The last place in Europe, they kicked him out of Italy.
Yep. And
yeah, that's the thing that trips me out. Like he was in Brazil. I'm like, what the
well, you got a lot of racist nationals down there.
I know. I'm like,
well, and you got a right-wing president, but they just freed up Lula. Lula just got out of jail. I think it was yesterday, and they had a big rally, and they have him out there. So he's so the people are rallying around to kind of get him going because people are not liking the way the right-wing government has moved. But yeah, you've got some right-wing factions certainly in the ruling class in Brazil. There's no question about it. Who were very racist, very, 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 very much so. And also they have paramilitaries that are supported very, very much by the ruling class in Brazil, who have a lot of money, who run industry, and you know, they have their own basically their own private armies for all that practical purpose, and they're rather dangerous. But so people think the paramilitaries just exist in Colombia. That's just not true. They have paramilitaries in Brazil também, and in Brazil as well. So it's pretty wild. But yeah, you have it. You have it there.
Hey, what's going on, everyone?
Hey, what's going on, Complex?
going on, Complex.
Not much. Just have a quick comment on that. Because I actually Milo Yiannopoulos, that gay alt-right dude or what have you. So there was like this story that came out earlier in the week. So him and what's his name? The dude who the alt-right what are they called? The alt-right boys or whatever the hell they were called.
The Proud
Gavin,
Boys?
yeah, the Proud Boys. Gavin, whatever his name is. Okay. See,
Yep.
these people essentially have this. They subscribe to this thought of protecting Western civilization,
Mhm.
right? So you go and gather up all of those of similar interest and of like mind, regardless of like the country, right? The country of origin. So if you do have an alt-right sort of pro-Western mindset,
Mhm.
then there's a thought that you have to gather these numbers up from the entire expanse of the globe. So that it would explain Bannon going to all these countries and consequently half of them getting kicked out of. But that's essentially what he's trying to do is trying to basically take this whole sort of West versus East type of thing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I heard it was mentioned about, I think it was DE was saying that, the plan with Russia and China is to kind of hit the U.S. from both sides to really kind of just wear them down, and you see it happening. But that would essentially be your Eastern Front, if you will. And so, what Bannon is out here doing, and all these other guys out here, it's essentially to try to form some sort of Western civilization protectorate, if you will. I don't know, like, how effective that's going to be, really. But,
Well, it's the last bastion of masculinity for WMs. That's really what this is coming down to. That's why Trump, is such a pivotal, a provocative figure for them, because he's the last WM that can go in and really make this happen. You can't rely on Lindsey Graham. Mike Pence is a no call, no show. There's nobody in the Republican Party who's able to actually stand up for those WMs who feel ostracized and defeated.
yeah, and then I mean, and that's kind of like that's really sort of like, the emperor, with no clothes on, because at the end of the day, a lot of these guys who pose as quote unquote, white Republicans or what have you, they're globalists just like anybody else, who's got some skin in the game. So, they know that their money is made in various places, and they ain't trying to screw that up. So they're only going to stroke the fires, but so much before they're like, well, look, man, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to ruin what I got.
Yeah, I mean, we had a we had a person come on the panel about a month or so ago talking about how the Chinese are cheating everybody.
Yeah, and the crazy thing too about this whole alt-right thing, to not get off topic, is like, so their ultimate goal is basically to have a united, I guess, white emirate. You know what I mean? Like
they call it an ethno state.
I guess like a, the Christian version of ISIS, like a Christian state type of thing, basically to be the last bastion of, white manhood. But the problem with that theory is they want to stand up against the Chinese, against the Middle Eastern, against the Africans. So, but I mean, when you look at the white population, I mean, manpower wise, I mean, it doesn't make sense. So I don't know. I think it's just wishful thinking. I think these alt-right dudes are just living a fantasy.
I wouldn't put it too far past them, man. That's how the Boers got into South Africa. So
Yeah.
True.
a Cocaine Kells actually gave the name Gavin McInnes.
Yeah, that's him. I knew it was Gavin something. Yeah, that's him.
All right, let me get to this next article from RT. We freed ourselves of IMF and had big plans on exports. Exiled Bolivian President Morales blasts coup and hints at U.S. role in it. I would say Bolivian President Evo Morales has accused the U.S. headquartered Organization of American States of making a political decision in backing the right-wing opposition, saying the coup continues to wreak havoc after his exile. Speaking from Mexico a day after he fled Bolivia, Morales said, The OAS is in the service of the North American empire. Morales said he could not understand how his military commanders could show such disloyalty. That confirms that my great crime is to be indigenous. It's a class problem, he said. The exiled president said after freeing itself from the International Monetary Fund, the Bolivian economy was doing better. Yet the coup plotters do not accept the nationalization of natural resources, Morales said. He also said the appointment of Janine Áñez as interim president confirms the coup and called for a national dialogue to end the violence in the country. Morales also claimed that a mechanical failure on a helicopter he was traveling on in early November was not accidental, and said he was the incident. He wants the incident investigated. The helicopter was forced to make an emergency landing just after takeoff due to a mechanical fault in the tail rotor. The socialist leader said he would return to Bolivia if the people asked. He also pleaded with the Bolivian opposition to stop the violence continuing after his exile. Why do they continue? He asked. So this is interesting because they're already claiming this as a coup d'etat. Now, I want to give some backstory on what happened a couple years ago. Let me share my screen again. In 2013, Bolivia, presidential plane forced to land after false rumors of Snowden on board. Bolivian officials say their country's presidential plane had to land in Austria on Tuesday after false rumors circulated that former U.S. National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden was aboard the aircraft. Portuguese authorities wouldn't let President Evo Morales' plane land for refueling in Lisbon. Bolivian Defense Minister Ruben Saavedra told CNN in Espanol. French authorities also wouldn't let the plane enter the airspace, he said. We are told that there were some unfounded suspicions that Mr. Snowden was on the plane. Bolivian Foreign Minister David, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. We do not know who has invented this lie. Someone who wants to harm our country. This information has been circulated is malicious information to harm this country. In a televised address late Tuesday night, Bolivian Vice President Alvaro Garcia Linera described Morales as hostage of imperialism. So what I'm pointing out here is that they have been gunning for Morales for years.
Man, I remember that.
Long before the Trump administration. So I don't want to put the blame just on the tangerine tyrant, but I want to put focus on this is how far they're willing to go to deny access to airspace and make this plane run out of fuel and make it crash on its own. This is how far they're willing to go. The United States is ruthless, man. They are fucking ruthless. And not only that, but they brought his plane down with NATO fighter jets and forced it to come down. And then they searched it, and then they searched the plane. In world history, this has never happened before.
Yeah, it never happened before. And I literally remember when that whole story broke about that. And Evo spoke on it, and he was just like, dude, there's no rhyme or reason for any of this type of shit as a sovereign nation that isn't in any type of war or isn't engaged in any hostilities with any other country. How the fuck is it that you got NATO fighter jets, you know what I mean, basically escorting us? Like he's like, there was a process, and that process got completely overstepped. And this is when because his presidency, I've been following it since he was elected. His presidency was a controversial one because he was elected by all the goddamn indigenous people. They had these indigenous voting rallies where they got all the indigenous people out and voted, and they voted him in. And he ran on the promise of nationalizing all of the resources, right? So that the indigenous people would benefit. And I think over the course of his presidency, I think they said that the incomes of the average Bolivian like doubled. Like so many people got pulled up out of poverty during his presidency.
Sure did.
Mhm.
We saw that happen with Lula as well.
I was just about to say it happened in Brazil too.
Yeah. And I was there.
It happened in
I
Venezuela.
watched this shit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I watched this shit. So it's the leaderships that we decide that we want to put in there that keeps the situations where they are. And you see how hard our country fights to keep certain kinds of leadership from coming into prominence.
Now, every Russian executive plane, presidential and Secretary of State and foreign ministers is flown with fighter jets now, MiG fighter jets or Sukhoi fighter jets.
Yep. Military escort.
Yep. They don't play that game anymore. That's a different sort of game. You
Yep.
can ground the plane of a president coming from on the global stage. That's a game changer. Imagine imagine what that opens up now. What happens when Bush decides he wants to fly over the Mediterranean in some African, some AU or some African fighter jet decides you need to bring your plane down. We need to search your plane and also put some handcuffs around you for war crimes.
Yeah. That's why Bush doesn't leave. That's why Bush doesn't leave the country.
Him
He
or Tony
or
Blair.
Cheney.
Him or Tony Blair.
Yeah. They don't step off. Cheney knows because everybody said they gonna throw his ass in the Hague. They've said this. I mean, some European countries have actually said some of this shit, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, these boys can't leave the States, man.
But you know what? There's going to come a time when the American people are going to actually stand up and say, you know what? We had enough of you. We're going to try you too.
Oh yeah.
It's going to happen. You can bet it's going to happen. It might happen it depends on what happened coming 2020. Just wait.
Oh yeah, that 2020 election is gonna have so much fuckery. It's gonna be nuts. But back to Bolivia. I mean, this is the typical MO of the United States. They don't like any leftist Latin American leaders to ever basically finish their finish their term. I mean, like Aristide, for example, in Haiti, like he never finished a term. He never did because his first term as president, military coup, and then his second term, military coup. So if there's a country within the Western Hemisphere that elects a president who stands against U.S. interests, they will try to do a coup. They did that with Chavez. Chavez, who was a former army dude, was able to get around that, and he created his own force and basically purged the military of all those pro U.S. Elements. So what's going on in Bolivia this is the U.S. MO, man, and it's sickening that this is happening. And from what I read today, I heard like some of Evo's like supporters already clashing in the streets. Like they're already protesting, say, "Yo, this coup is illegal. This is some bullshit." So this situation can get real ugly real fast, man. And it's just, I think this is also the U.S. too trying to isolate Venezuela, try to make Venezuela lose their friends, to put pressure on Maduro.
That's a big part of it. You remember Allende and them back in the 80s and and all that. You remember all that stuff that went on. I mean, we've been doing this a long time.
Hey, Nago, I was just about to ask. I was going to ask Go, have you read a book called The Guns of October?
You highly butter laid. Oh, you highly butter laid.
From Africa all the way to Chile, man. Chile, Peru. I mean, all the way to the Far East, Indonesia. I mean, this is not new, bro. This been going on.
This is in fact a business model that we've had in place, that we've perfected ever since the Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah.
And we've kept it like that, for the last, for 200 and some odd, for damn near 200 years. That's the deal. That's where we're at.
And my thing is, I don't know, like, when will Latin America wake up? Like, because I understand U.S. has so much influence, but it's like, I guess I can't say when will Latin America wake up. It's like, when will the dream, I guess, of, like, Fidel Castro, which is like all of Latin America, kind of like, say, fuck this shit, let's all work together and turn against the United States. I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime. I don't know, but
the United States plays a very effective role in getting involved in getting corrupt politicians in there, and we use it through assassination. We use money. We have a very sophisticated plan that we consistently use to keep everyone there separated. We use political ideology, communism, and all this bullshit.
They use women. I know that for Haiti, they use women to.
There's a part. They're part of that destabilization plan. I mean, it's just this is what they do. The name of the game is to destabilize, keep things somewhat chaotic, and then inject somebody in there who they could control, and then take over the chaos for a while, and then make the situation look kind of normal for a little bit, and then it's back to business as usual. The rapacious leaders are in there doing their thing and screwing over the people, and it's a model that's so predictable that they just consistently do it without. It's almost myopathetic for us. Venezuela was able to withstand it for a while, and was actually very effective. And I think you did bring that up, with the whole Chavez piece. And but still, once Chavez went down, you see what's going on over there right now. Same game. They're employing the same crap. I was in Caracas in 2004, and the country now, you can't really go in there. You can't really go in there. And another thing too, which I'm going to say this as well, if you travel around South America, you see what's going on, and you look at the heavy Africanized element, one of the last things they want, and why they have such problems with you here, which a lot of people don't seem to make the connection to, but if you travel around internationally, around South America and all that, you'll see it. The last thing they want you to do is have African Americans who are thinking clearly, have resources, linking up with the rest of these people in the hemisphere. That is the last thing they want you to do. Yep. Because they know if you start to put that together, it's a game changer and it's game over. And that's what they don't want you to do. Most people do not understand this.
Yeah.
I clearly see this as I travel around. And Brazil is one of the biggest countries. So why they keep the color game going, and they keep a bunch of ignorant Negroes running around trying to be whites and everything else like that, because the frenetic nature of the young people and linking up with your music and the whole game, we could change things overnight, very quickly if we link up together. Anyway, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. You were gonna say something?
No, if you look at what happened last year when or earlier this year, when the Sudanese president Omar al-Bashir flew to Syria to congratulate Assad on his victory over the terrorists, he had to fly on a Russian presidential plane. Remember that? He didn't fly on his own plane. He had to fly on a Russian presidential plane.
Sure did.
Yeah.
That's the only way he can get there and come back. And the Saudis and Americans were pissed about that.
One other thing to kind of speak to Nagon, what you were just saying, man. One of the things that I guess what we don't realize is that when we watch a lot of this stuff in the media, see, there's a blackout largely on showing you who the indigenous populations of like a lot of the South American countries are, because they look like us.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, the African element is really strong, and where I'm going to bring it back to Haiti. What terrified whites here in the West, Napoleon first and everyone after it, was they saw exactly what can happen if Black people gain together and move as a militaristic type of force against the West, where you won't need that many. You won't need as many as you think to just flip this whole son of a bitch over. And now they got to sit back and do business with you. They understand that. They understood the Louisiana Purchase, how that added 20% of the land mass to the United States without firing a shot because, literally, because of the Haitian Revolution. Because of that. They saw this. They understood how this game was really played and the kind of game that we could play in brinksmanship here in the West by changing borders, enriching nations that would never be in the game plan if it wasn't for you. They understand this. So that's part of their game, is the reason why they don't want indigenous and black people working together. And you see these pitiful folks in South America and South, and in the islands who are running around, just running behind the icy hot stunners and just trying to change their nature of their game racially, because they think that's going to bring them above when the strength that you have is really where you are. And that's the sad piece that we haven't seen over the last 200 years here, that we haven't truly actualized. It's just not talk. This is why they do what they do. So, you have to understand that. And that's why when we talk about really forming strong international ties, you have to understand that there's many of those who have interests against that. And so many of us have even bought into it. You hear very ignorant black people. I've even heard them here on in the manosphere. Hey, Africans, man, nah, man, they ain't trying to be down with you, and I ain't going to, you hear just blithering idiocy being spoken. But there's a reason for that. They're stupid because they've trained to be this way. And that's why, history and understanding what could really change out here, what could change the dynamics, is what they don't want you to understand, is what they don't want you to study and look at. Just look at maps and see where you are and see just how vulnerable this thing could really be. But anyway, go.
Yeah, because you can go back to Castro, and Castro said himself that Africa is that's the motherland, right?
That's right.
He said it long before he died. This was in the 1960s. That's the motherland. He said that to Mandela too. That when are you going to come to Havana? You also take into consideration Chavez before Maduro actually Africanized the Constitution, so he included the Africans in
the hell did.
Those in the diaspora into the Constitution, which gave them legal rights over the land, and that's why they wanted to get Chavez out. That was right before he did that, so they decided to overthrow him.
Yeah,
because
Evo Morales, he did nothing different. He took the same model, and
Dilma Rousseff as well. Dilma Rousseff did the same thing.
Yep.
And the thing is, for example, before Chavez came to power, like Afro-Venezuelans were basically nowhere in the political scene, nowhere. The only time you ever saw Venezuelans, I mean, it's the same thing in Brazil. Like the only time you see Venezuelans when they play for the soccer team. But what Chavez is, he uplifted them. He got them out of poverty. He got them into politics.
5 million.
Yeah.
Chavez also saw them as a protective force in that country. He was like, man, we raise these people up. They're not going to be against me. They're going to protect us. And, he understood that. That's why they wanted him out. Chavez understood this. These guys, the guys who they go against, are people that understand what this means. And this has been the eternal fight since the end of slavery here. The Haitian Revolution in 1801, that was a game changer. And what came out of that was a policy for the West to make sure that they don't see this happen again. And that's been going on ever since. Yeah, you have to understand just how strong this Haitian Revolution really meant in the West. And then we saw what went on in Brazil with the Maroon colonies, and Portugal saying that they're controlling this country, but yet here you had areas of Brazil where blacks were living free, supposed to be underneath slavery and so forth. And this was something that they fought against for such a very long time, which they ultimately could not defeat. They couldn't defeat them like that. So they just, these are things that you really have to understand. It was some lady here in in the chat, he just, I think, was speaking about going against black men. And it's like, wake up, open your eyes, sweetheart. See what's really going on. Don't be blind. I'm too live to fuck with up in here. We're too live on this. We know what's going on. Let's talk some real truth to power. This is not a game. We need to be thinking clearly, and that's what folks don't want you to do. They don't want you to think clearly out here.
Yeah, it's a global war against melanated people, and they're doing anything they possibly can to suppress people. White supremacy is global, and a lot of people think that we throw that term around loosely. No, we're seeing this in real time, man. We're seeing this in real time. That this is the reason why they need to overthrow these heads of states, to get them to reclaim that land that was given to the indigenous population, so that they can have Exxon and BP and the rest of these companies go in there and take over the land. And that's why what Evo Morales is saying in the article was that they are completely, the new opposition are completely against nationalizing the natural resources, because they want to give it to private institutions.
And what they don't want are those natural resources to be, how would I say, cooperatively owned and have your hands on it as well. They know what that means. Change the game. They don't want that, and that's what the whole ruling elite game is here. And people just have to understand it. I mean, there are those who do and those who rise up and try to play it. They don't get enough people behind them, and they end up getting swept out of power. For a lot of different reasons. And we've seen it. Lula's one of them. We're looking at this. Not only Chavez, but Lula.
And Dilma Rousseff is actually.
And when Lula was running, because I'm talking, my ex-fiance and all of them down there, we were talking about all this, and he was way ahead. He was way ahead, and then we put in a CIA backed
Bolsonaro,
mayonnaise-like individual in there to shut it down. And now people are losing jobs. It's
Zionist sympathizer.
Yeah,
not only that, but the motherfucker went and torched the goddamn Amazon.
Man, let me tell you something right now, my friend. Not only did he torch the Amazon, they burnt down some of the biggest libraries in Brazil right now.
All that shit, man.
If you went to Rio and if you have seen the library in Rio, bro.
Okay, been there.
African
been there.
I mean, damn, man.
Been there.
Oh,
and all your history's there. That was not by accident. It's not by accident.
That was by accident.
So you have to understand what these people are trying to do. All right.
Oh, facts, Nicole.
No, it's too butter late, man. We too butter late to fuck with us up in here. We too butter late. We see what's going down. We far too butter late. The name of the game is let's just keep talking facts so people can sit back and kind of listen to what some of this truth is, because this is not difficult to see. It really isn't. It's just that we're so ignorant of facts. We're so ignorant of history, and many of us are poor thinkers that you do need somebody to help guide you through this process. And that's where we have problems with some of the others who don't feel that you should be telling them anything, but yet they'll put a drug dealer and a savage up as a hero in your community. Which is very, very, very disturbing. Plays right into that hand as well.
Yeah, and they'll rather fight over a hashtag, whether or not they're foundational or their descendants.
Exactly, and I mean that whole shit is just so ignorant. But
yeah, man.
But what Nogon said is true. Like with the whole Haitian Revolution, because Toussaint, before he passed away, his ultimate dream was to liberate all the slaves in the Western Hemisphere. He had a vision of just like, after Haiti, going to Jamaica, and after Jamaica,
I believe they did, right?
They
sent Haitians here.
Yeah,
they sent Haitians here. They were listen, Haitians were a part of
the American Revolution.
Of American Revolution, but they were part of the slavery revolt of 1831. They were part of that.
Battle of Savannah. Look at the Battle of Savannah.
They were part of that. I mean, these guys were not playing. I mean, they're back in those days. Them cats weren't playing. They understood what time it was. and so did we. And it was terrifying for America because they thought that they could lose their republic, and it was that risk. Make no mistake about it. It was.
So that's why the U.S. does what they're doing to this day. They don't want these leaders to link up and liberate. Because think about it, if all these Latin American countries have these leaders who are for the people, they all link up against the United States, they might empower melanated people here too, and then that's when shit will really hit the fan. So
there was a time when Black people were moving in the right direction, and somehow, some way, man, things just fell apart.
It was a concern. If it didn't fall apart by accident, you had people who came to power who had a lack of character. You had those who were weak of mind, those who could easily be corrupted, those who didn't have the belly for the full fight anymore, others who had grown weary of battle and were promised certain kinds of things, and certain things were promised and were not delivered. As I said, the reparations piece, I don't know how the Haitians truly sat back and accepted that. That was something that I would have never accepted. Mm-hmm. But that was something that they thought that ultimately, if you started paying reparations to Europe, maybe we could cut these guys back a little bit. And that was a terrible mistake. That was a terrible error.
No, you had something similar happen here when the Back to Africa movement came up. You had the League of Gentlemen here that said no, we don't want to go back to Africa.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't. I mean, there were a lot of issues, but the name of the game is that we just did not. We haven't kept the fight going, and one of the biggest things from how they have maintained power in this hemisphere more than anything else is the lack of cooperation between melanated folks and our cause. Many believed that they wanted to that they had different objectives of which they didn't, and unfortunately, which was bred into them was a tremendous love of this white man, of which many Black men and many Black women played a very key role in helping to maintain this structure, because some caught a few nigga dollars, and pardon the expression, I have to use that, but unfortunately I have to use it, some nigga dollars and a little bit of land, and they were paid off. And those who were paid off had a structure, and they wanted to be like those who oppressed them. And that's a part of human nature, of which the leaders understood, and they played into that, and they played into it well, of which we still deal with currently today, in all its breadth and power.
Yeah. Let me get to this next article. I got like 3 or 4 articles left, so let me just run right through these. This one is from Stratfor, Turkey and the West, a gathering storm. Turkey straddling a strategic geographic nexus between Europe and Asia is the focus of conversation in this episode of the Stratfor podcast. Domestic, economic, and political challenges are pulling at the rule of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Meanwhile, relations between Turkey and the United States, a key NATO ally, are at an ebb. And after Ankara launched an offensive into northeastern Syria, the U.S. Congress has called for sanctions. In the meantime, Turkey's relationship with the European Union, which Ankara ostensibly aspires to join, appears now to be fraying at the edges. All of this raises questions. Will Turkey now turn to Russia? So this is interesting because all global economics is moving east. It's moving into Southeast Asia, all of it. So the idea that Turkey, won't bite the hand that probably fed them, or maybe drink the backwash out of the beverage that has been handed to them by the West, they may very well do that, because Turkey's economic relationship with the United States is less than $9 billion a year. In Europe, it's actually $80 billion a year. And I think with Russia, it's something like $20 to $25 billion. So when you take all of that into consideration, they can actually cut ties with the United States and don't really need to do business with them. In fact, the embargo that is installed on them right now from the European powers and the rest of the West means that they have no choice but to look to Russia and China and Venezuela and those other countries, because the only way you're going to get energy and security is from those Eastern powers.
Yep, and to make a quick point, that
Mhm.
this was the point that I was saying, that if they lose Turkey, that will be a major blow for the West, and Turkey's not afraid to go east. I mean, they already have done business with Iran, they have business with India, China. I mean, they did some business with Venezuela, so Turkey's like, all right, bet you wanna you want to have it, one way, well, it's gonna be another way. So.
Well, I think always seen it as Turkey kind of doing just that. I don't want to say like seeing who's got the best deal, but you know, they haven't exactly sided with one or the other. They really are being very pragmatic with regards to allegiance, you know, and partnership. So it's really kind of about who gives them the best situation towards the future, you know, as far as global alignment is concerned. So I don't know. I've always just seen the Turks as being very, very pragmatic in their approach, and you know, not being so gung ho to just say, "Oh, we're 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 all in on NATO," or you know, we're all in on buying these missile defense systems from the Russians, or you know what I mean? They really haven't shown you any sort of commitment one way or the other. Which, in all actuality, if you ask me, that's smart.
It's been less than 100 years since the European ganged up on Turkey. You remember that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. That's what I mean. You ain't gonna be so quick to just jump on board on some shit, you know, given if you just go back 100 years.
Mhm.
So they never forgot. So they're like, you ganged up on me. I mean, fuck you. That's basically Turkey's mindset right now. I mean, yeah, they were part of NATO during the Cold War because they kind of had to, but now Turkey's realized that, well, Europe and the United States is being hard on them for even trying to have close relations with Russia, and it was also, you know, the United States and Europe was basically say, hey, Turkey, support these rebels in Syria, but we got your back though. Don't worry, we got you. And then they turn around and support the Kurds. So Turkey's like, wait, what the fuck? You said that you had my back in Syria. You have me support these crazy Arabs with guns, and now you supporting these Kurds who may potentially support the Kurdish separatists in my own country. So that's why Turkey was like, no, I'd rather deal with Russia than deal with this mess in Syria. I mean, Syria really changed everything. Like, we're going to look back in 100 years at this. The Syrian civil war is going to be an interesting geopolitical case study that shifted everything. It's crazy.
I don't think this is good. It's shifted everything. I think what we're seeing is a lot of the conflicts and a lot of what happened from the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, which has had some kerfuffles in the 20th, and now in the 21st, are still being played out. I do not believe a lot of that of the past has totally ended. I think the past is present, and the present is future, and that's where I think we really are. That's why I'm a keen history buff, because I don't think things change that quickly or that drastically as many of us would like to say, or feelings or notions even. So I feel that this is still a playing out of the Crimean War in the 1850s, the First World War in the early 20th century, the Second World War, and once again we're coming back around again for a new round to see who can re-anneal those old empires from those days. I just don't think this is over yet. I think things do not change for quite a while, and I think this has been a fight that's been going on for a couple of 100 years, and I don't think it's over.
All right, let me read this article. Go ahead, D. I need to get to the article.
You're right about that, because I heard from the horse's mouth. He said that the bullet that killed Archduke Ferdinand you can still hear the noise from it today. And they're still fighting that war. You said.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty interesting. I'll say this very quickly. I'm going to move on. They asked Ho Chi Minh when he was, running his, his newly found country. What did you think about this? What did you think about the French Revolution? He said it's still too early to tell. All right, I'm done.
All right. This one's from Stratford. Facing sanctions, Turkey's defense industry goes to plan B. Turkey's defense industry has taken a blow, but it's certainly not down and out. Ankar's relationship with the European Union and many of its fellow NATO members has hit a new low following Turkey's military incursion into northeastern Syria. Outraged at the Turkish operation, a large number of Western states, including key arms exporters such as France, Germany, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, suspended their arms exports to Turkey. Meanwhile, the United States, which supplies around 60% of Turkey's total arms imports, the most of any country, could also turn off taps if Congress passes a series of anti-Turkey motions. The Turkish defense sector's current pain notwithstanding, the country is not bereft of options, suggesting it will ultimately manage to push through the tough obstacles by turning to alternative exporters and relying even more on its own defense industry. Because the Turkish defense industry uses many Western subcomponents to produce its own equipment, the current suspensions and embargoes will sting. But the Western measures won't just deprive Turkey of new equipment, as long as suspensions will also exhaust Turkey's pre-existing stockpiles. This will be detrimental to the maintenance, upkeep, and modernization of some key weapon systems that Turkey relies on, including F-16 fighter jets, Leopard and M60 tanks, and other major equipment that Turkey has purchased from the West. But despite the inevitable pain from Western armed embargoes, Turkey has alternatives to the deal with the problem. First, Turkey has weathered a number of NATO arms embargoes and cutoff over the last 50 years. Each time, Ankara has sought to learn from them. Most seriously, Turkey experienced an embargo from 1975 to 1978 after it intervened in Cyprus in 1974 in response to a Greek-supported coup. Unable to access much-needed U.S. equipment and weaponry during the 42-month-long embargo, Turkey was forced to begin developing its own nascent defense industry. Turkey's arms import as a share of its military spending. So what we can see here is the arms import spending, and it's listed in percentile or percentages. So we see here that U.S. between 1970 and 1979 had the largest arms import spending on in reference to Turkey. And now you see that in 2019, that has actually dropped significantly, less than 10%. Since the 1970s, the Turkish defense industry has grown markedly to the extent that Turkey is now a major exporter of defense-related equipment. Turkey even claims that its own local industry already meets 70% of its military requirements, up from 20% 15 years ago. Thus, while Ankara finds itself in the relatively familiar position of facing arms bans, it is significantly better prepared to survive the current problem given its experience with such embargoes in the more developed state of its domestic defense industry. But beyond moving more toward self-reliance, Ankara could also look elsewhere in the weapons suppliers. Turkey has already expanded its defense ties with countries like South Korea, Ukraine, Belarus, Pakistan, China, and most notably Russia. In fact, Turkey was already facing possible U.S. sanctions even before its military incursion into northeastern Syria due to its purchase of the Russian S-400 surface-to-air missile system. Turkey is likely to turn further toward these countries as a means to alleviate some of the bottlenecks stemming from the Western arms embargoes. Ankara, in fact, has already purchased Russian ammunition after running low earlier in its operation in Syria. Interesting. This shift away from the West is likely to continue, as Ankara is already in advanced negotiations with Moscow to purchase Su-35 fighter jets. Naturally, for Russia, the opportunity to land a major arms deal sale that could help deepen the rift between NATO is an opportunity too good to pass up. In the end, Turkey cannot completely avoid the pain of Western arms embargoes, especially if they last for several months. Domestic defense industry projects that rely on Western components will inevitably face delays, and existing Western source weaponry will be harder to modernize and maintain without access to Western spare parts. But with domestic and alternative suppliers to fall back on, Turkey's military stands a good chance of riding out the storm. I want to bring up this article. Wow, I wasn't even sharing my screen. Shit, why didn't you guys tell me?
I'm responding to Zone in the chat right now, so I was on the other screen. Sorry.
Hey, Complex, you got a deep thinker question in you, bro.
Oh, he wants some smoke.
Or not Zone, man. No. That's good. That's good. He's fan. That's folks, man.
Yeah, I want to point to this article from the South China Morning Post. Turkey to buy Chinese missile defense system. This was in September 28th, 2013. So Turkey was already looking for alternatives to the Patriot missile battery 7 years ago. This is 3 years before the coup de tat attempt in 2016. Somebody in Turkish intelligence, the MIT, saw that that Turkey was going to bump heads with the US at some point, and that they needed to look for alternative systems. The winning Chinese FD-2000 system beat the Patriot, the Russian S-400, and the French-Italian Eurosam SAMP-T. It was announced on Thursday. So they were going to purchase this surface-to-air missile system. The FD-2000 is the export designation of the HQ-9 air defense system. In January, Turkey restructured its $4 billion surface-to-air missile system dubbed T-Loramids, which had originally been made as an off-the-shelf purchase consisting of radar launchers and intercept missiles. This is not something new. Turkey has been looking to get away from being dependent upon the West, which is why when we talk about the U.S. is going to miss out, I don't think the U.S. is going to really care all that much.
But just look at Turkey. Look how they're rolling, man. Turkey, they've had some plans for a while, man. I'm just scoping these cats, man. I'm watching this thing real close. Anyway, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. I'm just looking how they move.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Patriot, the Patriot defense battery system that they have, that the U.S. sells, man, a lot of people don't want that anymore. A lot of countries don't want that, or at least the militaries don't want it. What's the next point I wanted to bring on?
I think one thing that sells is like, damn, nobody wants those Patriot missiles. Nobody wants them joined still.
Well, it's old and it's expensive. It's meant to shoot down fighter jets and not actually shoot down other missiles in the same way that the S-300 and S-400 is designed to do. You could actually try to shoot down a missile, but the chances of it actually shooting down another missile is actually pretty low.
Let alone hypersonic missiles.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to match a hypersonic missile to another hypersonic missile, but the thing is that the Patriot missile battery is like $5 billion, and it's not even all that accurate. So, I mean, yeah, you can walk around and say, yeah, we have a Patriot missile battery to defend our aerial threat vectors, but at the end of the day, if other countries that want to invade you know that this thing is vulnerable, that thing is nothing. It's a spitball.
Not only that, Mike, but you got the guy who sold it to you in the background with a little switch. That if you don't know that if you don't like who you're gonna attack with his missile, you can always push the switch.
Or cut off the spigot of supplies.
Exactly, bro.
All right, let me get to this next article real quick. All right, this one is from commondreams.org. Bolivian coup comes less than a week after Morales stopped multinational firms and lithium deal. So the nationalization of natural resources is what Morales said earlier in the other article. Lithium, you need lithium, as in lithium ion, lithium polymer for batteries for what? The Sunday military coup in Bolivia has put in place a government which appears likely to reverse a decision by just resigned President Evo Morales to cancel an agreement with a German company for developing lithium deposits in the Latin American country for batteries like those in electric cars. Hello? Bolivia's lithium belongs to the Bolivian people, tweeted Washington monthly contributor David Atkins, not to multinational corporate cabals.
Oh, well, that's that. Whoa.
The coup, which on Sunday resulted in Morales resigning and going into hiding, was the result of days of protests from right-wing elements angry at the leftist Morales government. Senator Janine Anez of the center-right party, Democratic Unity, is currently the interim president in the unstable post-coup government in advance of elections. Investment analyst publisher Argos urged investors to keep an eye on the developing situation and noted that gas and oil production from foreign companies in Bolivia had remained steady. The Morales move on November 4th to cancel the December 2018 agreement with Germany's ACI Systems, Alemania, came after weeks of protests from residents of Potosi area. The region has 50 to 70% of the world's lithium reserves. 50 to 70% of the world's lithium reserves in the Salar salt flats. 50 to 70%. That's enough to start a war.
Damn.
That's huge.
Among
That's
other,
huge.
The power. He gained the
That's
power
huge.
because of something similar. The water in Bolivia was sold to a French company. And they were charging the people so much for the water that people couldn't afford the water.
Yep. Very good point.
Indigenous people brought him in and he could get the water.
Among other clients, ACISA provides batteries to Tesla. Tesla stock rose Monday after the weekend, after Morales stepped down on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
It's not a mystery. It's not a mystery, but
demand for lithium is expected to more than double by 2025. This soft, light mineral is mined mainly in Australia, Chile, and Argentina. Bolivia has plenty, 9 million tons that have never been mined commercially. The second largest amount in the world. But until now, there's been no practical way to mine and sell it. Morales' cancellation of the ACISA deal opened the door to either a renegotiation of the agreement with terms delivering more of the profits to the area's population or the outright nationalization of the Bolivian lithium extraction industry. The people of that area look like us and look like him.
And Mike,
Okay?
you know, if you nationalize your resources, I mean, that means that you hold the mineral rights, correct?
50 to 70% of the world's reserves. Keep that in mind. Bolivia was about to be the next Singapore.
Hey, Zone, there's your answer, bro. why there might be those who oppose hedge money.
Mm-hmm.
That is crazy. I mean, this explains everything. This explains everything that's going on in Bolivia. I mean, it's, oh man, like,
Hey, that woman down there, the one
You
that
know, it's what
took
comes down
over the
to.
presidency, she pulled off what Juan Guaido tried to do.
Yep.
After she walked in and says, "Well, the opposition didn't show up. Okay, I'm the president."
There we
the
go.
army says, "Okay, yeah, you're the president."
and from what I'm hearing, like shit's getting real bad in Bolivia. You have these right-wing mobs going around, just
Death squads.
going around,
That's
like
what,
attacking indigenous people. And there was like a tweet I saw, like she said a tweet a couple years ago that, oh, we have to remove these indigenous people, these satanic people, something that sense. So
yeah.
so she wants to genocide these people. So shit's gonna get real ugly in Bolivia because
We've seen it before, but now that's lithium is for all practical purposes like gold, man. They're gonna remove those peoples out of that area. But anyway, go ahead.
It's enough to start a war. It's
For
enough to start a
sure.
war. That's why they found deposits in Zimbabwe. Okay, there's a large lithium deposit in Zimbabwe and South
Mike,
Africa.
do they have them also in Afghanistan, from my understanding as well? Lithium deposits?
Yes, major lithium deposits in Afghanistan, as well as I think in I want to say Uzbekistan or one of the stands over there. Might be one of Eminem stand fans might be able to tell us in the chat. But yeah, this is what it's about, you know. And people sit up here and say, "Well, you guys, you know, you ain't build nothing here. You ain't build no infrastructure here." Well, guess what? The people who look just like you down in Latin America are trying to hold on to the wealthiest resources right now, and you're saying we need to ignore them and focus on the hashtag.
Yeah, but you can't argue. There's you know, these arguing with those folks, it's ridiculous. But anyway, go ahead. It's ridiculous.
Let me get to this next one. Press TV. Fears a civil war in Bolivia as U.S. welcomes power grab. A senator proclaimed herself as Bolivia's interim president Tuesday in an effort to fill the power vacuum, but Morales condemned the move as a sneaky coup. The power grab came just as Morales, who transformed the Andine nation as its first indigenous president, left the country for Mexico with the aim of helping Bolivia recover from weeks of violent protests. But the events unfolding in the wake of Deputy Senate Speaker Janine Áñez proclaiming herself as the interim president portended more violence ahead as rival protesters fought on the streets of the capital. Shortly after Morales left for Mexico, where he was granted asylum, he accused opposition leader Carlos Mesa and protest leader Luis Fernando Camacho of staging a coup with the help of the police. His departure came after what is seen by many as dramatic coup against the one-time Lama shepherd from the Bolivian highlands and former cocoa growers union leader. As President Morales helped lift millions out of poverty, increase social rights, and presided over nearly 14 years of stability and high economic growth in the South America's poorest country. Bolivia has been experiencing years of political and economic stability and growth under his rule. The economy has grown by an annual average of about 4.5%, well above the regional average. And the International Monetary Fund predicts it will grow at 4% this year. It pains me to leave the country for political reasons, but I'll always be concerned. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm not gonna read this whole thing because I think we've covered this already. But
But one key point is Bolsonaro and Juan Guaido support the new president of Bolivia, just to put that out there.
mhm.
But see, the problem down there also is the army, and the army, most of the army people look just like him.
Yep.
Why would they let the what do they call them now? I forgot the name they call them. But why would they let them take over?
They
Because
got
I don't think it's them by themselves. You know, the articles I've read all day has been pointing to the fact that the CIA and the IMF have been printing money and putting it in their pockets. So you know, they bought these guys basically. Trump said the events in Bolivia send a strong signal to the illegitimate regimes in Venezuela and Nicaragua. Those are the governments that have long been resisting Washington's coup attempts. This is interesting, very interesting. Let's look at Nicaragua and let's look at Nicaragua real quick. Now, this is an old article from April 29th, 2016. Nicaragua drops $80 million on Russian tanks. News Monday that Russia had shipped the first 20 of 50 battle tanks to Nicaragua, rattled Costa Rican officials and left others scratching their heads. $80 million on T-72B tanks are a significant purchase for the hemisphere's second poorest country, which spent $71.6 million total on its military in 2015. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, an organization that tracks global digital military spending, Nicaragua has significantly increased its military budget during the last 5 years, a move that foreign relations experts see as seen as rooted in the Nicaraguan domestic politics and Russia's international ambitions. Carlos Casante, director of the University's International Relations Department, said that the tanks are part of President Daniel Ortega's plan to strengthen the army as a political force inside Nicaragua. During the 1990s, the country's military budget was cut following the Contra War, and the weakened public institution lost some of its clout. He said the purchase of the tanks was a sign that the military is becoming more influential politically, but he did not see it as a bellicose gesture to Nicaragua's neighbors, including Costa Rica. What they're preparing for is a possible U.S. invasion. Now, could they hold off the U.S. with 50 battle tanks? Probably not. Do I want to get hit if I'm a tank commander for the U.S. U.S. ground forces? Do I want to get hit with a Russian tank? I probably don't want to. That thing is just as good as the what the Americans have to offer. It's still a tank at the end of the day. The point of the matter here is that most of these socialist countries are preparing for a long and embittered fight. So let me hit this last article. All right, this one's from RT.com. The U.S. would attack foes and friends to protect its hegemony and doesn't shy away from using terrorists as proxies. Assad to RT. Assad had an interview over the weekend, which he said, so he made some amazing statements. I'm not going to play any of the video here, but he said something that I thought was very interesting, that he said that the attack on Syria is World War III. It's a microcosm to World War III. So what you're seeing happening is what's going to happen all over the world. where the U.S. tries to take down these governments through proxy forces and create World War III for the nation states itself, the socialist states itself. Anybody have any comments? Did you see the interview? It's a great interview if you have not seen it.
Well, what he said is fact. I mean, project for a new American century. What does that tell you?
Yeah, that's the reason why, in regards to Venezuela, I mean, the things have like calmed down in Venezuela, but I don't think they've given up on that yet. Like they're still probably thinking about the worst possible solution to get rid of Maduro, because they tried pressure, they tried a military, well, they tried to have the military turn against them, that failed. So they're going to try to do a civil war, but they know that's the worst possible option because that could spiral way out of control. Then you have Brazil nearby, you have Colombia nearby. So if you have a civil war there, you have the FARC operating in Colombia, that could start shit up. The shit could get real ugly. So it's the MO. What they saw in Syria, they're going to try to do it to all these other different countries. But the problem is, you have Russia and maybe China. I mean, China doesn't want to get involved military in anything. They just about their money. But if the Russians are like, no, we're not gonna let that go down like that. And
well, they're not really ready for a conflict anyways. They need to finish signing those agreements with those other countries, like this one right here from South China Morning Post. Xi Jinping hails Greece deals as model for Chinese cooperation with Europe. Greece has agreed to open up its further investment from China in what President Xi Jinping describes as a model of Sino-European cooperation. The two sides signed 16 deals in total on Monday, with Athens offering investors access to its energy infrastructure and cultural sectors in return for more agricultural exports. The Chinese leader's visit comes at a time when his country's economic activities are facing increased scrutiny across the European Union, but the two leaders struck a positive note on Monday, with Xi promising to look at deeper cooperation with Greece in all sectors. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis also pledged to overcome any obstacles facing Chinese state-owned companies' plan to upgrade the port of Piraeus and agreed to an extradition treaty between the two sides. Extradition treaty. A move seen as helpful to Xi's anti-corruption drive. China has been putting pressure on Greece to fully accept the plan by state-owned shipping giant Costco to expand the port, which is on track to become the busiest container port in the Mediterranean. But the project ran into trouble earlier this year after building work was banned in much of the port due to concerns about the archaeological impact. So they've made some significant deals here. Interesting.
Something was Italy, remember?
Yes.
Italy, and then French couldn't be outdone. Macron has made what, 3 trips so far to China?
Well, yeah, he's been begging and pleading with China to, not displace them out of Africa with the francophone currency, but we see that starting to dwither as well.
Yeah, did you see that that article, Mike? I think it was the president of Benin. He was basically saying that a lot of the West African countries, the French-speaking African countries, are gonna break away from the CFA, that franc, the currency that they use, and that they're going to pull the money out of the Central Bank of France.
CFA.
Yeah, the CFA. Yeah. So I mean, he said it. I mean, no other francophone countries have confirmed it, but it's like you're starting to see this movement. So,
Hey, Zoe, you know what? Behind, well, there's a lot of from the expats, African people, not only African people, but diaspora,
Mhm.
after African leaders to do that.
Mhm.
If you see it all over the internet, if you look at everybody who's doing videos from every country in Africa,
Mhm.
the expats from those countries and the people in diaspora are
Mhm.
after the leaders saying, get rid of France, get rid of France, get rid of France.
Mhm.
That's why French, they worked out a deal with this guy who was in charge of the African Union to get rid of the minister, the U.S. Ambassador,
Mhm.
ambassador to the diaspora here.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they're after France, man. They they getting France out of what's it called? Next on
Because
the docket, Britain.
yeah, but neither one of them will be able to defend their political interests in political and economic interests in the continent. What can they possibly do? They don't have the military power. We read an article months ago that Britain's military is so dilapidated, it's not even fit for war, without assistance from the United States. Then you factor in that France can't really maintain its hegemony anymore. It's starting to decline. That's why the yellow vests are going nuts.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, but that's interesting that China's making moves into Greece and Italy. Like that's a chess move right there, and that won't be the last chess move the Chinese will have in Europe. So
Hmm. Well, not just Italy and Greece, but they also he was also in Spain, I think earlier this year or last year.
yeah, it's really interesting, and it's just like what you said before, Mike, that China's not going to make any military moves until I guess until Belt and Road is solidified. So
Hmm.
uh, I mean,
Well, they
I
don't
hope
need to fire a shot. They can handle things diplomatically.
mm,
They don't need to
yeah,
fire a shot.
yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I wonder what the world's going to look like in 10 years from now, 2029. Like, what are we going to see 10
I
years from
look at I look at Elon Musk real different, real funny style now.
Yeah,
After that article, man, look at you real funny style now.
he's South African. He's a boar, man. You got to remember that.
Yeah, let me answer this guy's question in the chat, man, because he said it to me earlier. I forgot to answer it. What is this guy's name? What's this person's name? Yeah, he says, Mike, can you briefly expound on your last statement? How did the Boers use white nationalist agenda to get into South Africa? I know they settled there, but was it based on a supremacist ideology? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. There's actually a documentary on YouTube. I'll see if I can find it. I'll post it after the live stream is over. But they asked the Boers, what right do you have to the land? And they pointed to he held up a Bible, and he said it's ordained in his Bible. And the person that was interviewing him said, pull out a section in the Bible where it says that. And he put the Bible behind his back and said no. This is the mindset of a white supremacist. When confronted, they don't have any legitimacy to the land. And so what I'm saying here is a lot of historians, a lot of European historians try to say, oh, the land was empty. There was nobody there. Bullshit. Who did they kill? Who are all those people they killed? All those Zulus.
Well, what people had to see was, the whole thing of moving into that whole Southern African area, where you had Sheikh Zulu, who basically, were uniting the nations and came with a whole new type of warfare that had fundamentally taken over. The whites were afraid to come down into that area until he was deposed. And as his empire was deposed and started to come apart, that's when whites came in there and actually started to have physical confrontations with blacks during that period. But before that, you had the so-called Boers or the English were sitting down and holding conferences with them, because when one of the big English emissaries were down there and was hanging out, Sheikh made sure that he had his troops and his armies running around all day, all night. That's all he heard was just troops going. They were scared. They were afraid to come into that area, thought they would lose. So yeah, it was all about conquering black folks after a period of time, and then using white supremacy to try to conquer all of Southern Africa. That's really what that was about. And Shaka, in fact, was actually was a buttress against that for a while, and he knew it. I don't know if you guys are thoroughly aware of that, but those who understand the Shaka Zulu story.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That, I mean, there's many historic pieces of information available to prove that point. But to answer his question, was it based on white supremacy? It absolutely was. It absolutely was.
European colonialism into Africa.
Well, that's what it was
based
about.
on white supremacy, because think about the white man's burden. You know what I'm saying? Oh, these inferior Africans, they can't do nothing right, so we got to come in there and steal their resources and try to quote unquote civilize them. Which basically,
but that was propaganda as well. The white supremacy piece was propaganda. To run and run that throughout Europe to come through there. It was propaganda. As I said, they did not want to attack and fight Shaka straight up. They didn't want to deal with him at that point in time. They waited for the empire to fall apart as he was deposed. That's what happened, and then they used that as a way to take over, and they used that as propaganda. They used it. So yeah, it was all about white supremacy and using that as a propaganda to take over the southern tier. Just like they used white supremacy to use in the Civil War against black people, and then when they started drilling black folks in the streets of Sumter, South Carolina in the summer of '65, many whites got upset and said, we can no longer utilize the term white supremacy, if we're going to have black troops, because we were that effective against them in the Civil War for the North. So it's that propaganda is huge. That's huge. They push that. That's their game. That's their game plan. That's what's used against melanated people. It is what it is.
Yeah, and that guy who asked that question, I mean, he has to read his history. I mean, why else would the Boers get there? Why else would after that they implement apartheid? And even to this day, even though apartheid officially, I mean, and I put that in quotes, officially ended like 20, 30 years ago, the black South Africans are still in the bottom. Meanwhile, these white Boers, like the De Beers and all, making billions of dollars from diamonds all over Southern Africa and parts of Central Africa, are still dominant. You have, I mean, look at Elon Musk. You think there would have been a black South African version of Elon Musk from South Africa? Hell no. This guy came from privilege. So no. The whole Boers agenda has been white supremacy, and they are still paranoid that one day the black Africans will rise up against them. To this day, they're still paranoid. I think there's like these majority white towns in South Africa. You know what I'm saying? All these white people moving in there, getting their guns and preparing for the day of their version of the day of the rope type of shit. And so if there's a race war happens, that they can bunker down and fight these swarm of niggas. But so they still have that white supremacist mentality, all of them.
They certainly do. It's more black hatred now because they saw. I mean, when they gave into the ANC, I'm going to say this very quickly. They knew they had to cut some kind of deal with the Africans at that stage of the game, because the ANC was sitting there out in the outskirts of Joburg and these places, literally in the forests, in the jungles there, combining massive armies to come into the towns and villages and do damage. They knew it. And so they started to cut deals based on that. Then the veneer of white supremacy from the standpoint of just pure white supremacy was broken at that stage of the game. But they still have a view of white privilege, that we're privileged, we are still superior, we still should be running the economic streams of our game, while the politics will be turned over more to the black people. And now you're starting to see some very poor boars now in towns, and they're saying how blacks are putting them at the bottom of the barrel now, and they're turning things over. So things are kind of turning around, and I've got a lot of friends who are in South Africa right now. Yeah, you know, there's some changing of the guard a little bit slowly, but that was totally based on whites being superior there, and the Brits backing them up more than anything else. Because when the Brits beat the Boers, they put the Boers back in power, the British. So yeah, it was all about whites ruling that part of the continent for sure. That's all that was about. Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, of course, resources in the whole game, but yeah, yep. Still to this day, I think to a large extent, there are those who would like to say that is the case, but we haven't. But like you said, the De Beers and the others who own a lot of the wealth, that still hasn't gone over to black folks, and they're prepared. And I actually believe if blacks did make a move on that, I don't know. I wonder if American troops would be down there as well. I'm kind of thinking, you know, that's, you know, a tremendous bashing of white supremacy. And if that did happen, that would shake up the world to a large extent. And I don't know if Africa's ready to go through that as of right now. But
they could have sacrificed enough people to do it. I mean, the Cubans came in with 40,000 troops and completely knocked down the racist apartheid military.
They sure did.
Mhm.
They sure did. They did the same. They did the same thing in Angola as well. The white power structure that was there, they knocked them out the box quick, with less than that. So yeah, that's a fact. They could, but I'm just wondering, you know, because I know there's a lot of there's lithium and there are other element. What's it? Titanium that they get that goes into our military and our aircraft and other things that could be a real issue. So I think that we might put our own troops in South Africa if blacks really try to take over all of the resources that are controlled by Europeans. I actually think that we would see something like that happen, but I think that may happen in the future. We'll see. Oh, it's deep.
Yeah, DE Raptor, you have anything you want to add?
Oh, you guys covering it, man. Going back to the history. It's always built on history, bro. Yep, it's always built on history. Nothing ever happens in a capsule. People like to look at things from a point of view of only the present. But like Lagon was saying, this history goes back even to British, the deal that the British made with the Boers. You know.
And the Boers weren't some you know, elite fighting force. These were farmers, man, with guns, man.
And the Brits basically saw them as inferior to them.
Yeah.
The Brits were like, you fucking Boers are a bunch of fucking animals. That's how they really saw them. You know,
Well,
Brits
call
saw
them Wiggers.
Yeah, well, not even Wiggers, but saw them something less as more like WTs. You know, white trash. It's kind of how they really saw them. They saw them
Like
as inferior to
rednecks.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. They saw them as inferior to them. But yet they were like, well, we can't have the blacks controlling everything. So so even though they beat the Boers in certain conflicts down there, knocked them out the box, they put them back in power over the Africans.
They were ruthless,
Same thing
though.
happened in Zimbabwe.
To maintain, yes.
When Cecil Rhodes took over Zimbabwe, the same thing happened.
That's right, and Cecil Rhodes and all. I mean, this was ill. I mean, the Brits played a very ill role there. The Boers played an exceedingly ill role as well. They were savages, but that's kind of how that went down. That was a white man in Africa, and they were African leaders, mainly Sheka, who saw that early. But anyway, that's how that's going down. But I put the Brits more at the real root of the power base there than anyone else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Britain was responsible for a lot of the foolishness that you see done in the world today. The
Yep.
British, I mean, true. And you go back in British history, especially in Africa, bro,
hmm
and you look at what they did in Kenya, what they did in Tanzania, what they did in Ghana. I mean, they were really savage.
Yeah.
I mean, savage, man.
I mean, killing women in their sleep, killing children in their sleep. Just real savage stuff they did down there.
Yeah.
And you have these alt-right idiots to this day saying like, oh, we're trying to preserve Western civilization. I mean, what type of civilization? Just doing whatever you want with melanated people. I mean, that's the civilization that they want to
Yeah, but also whites, they, this is nothing. They killed a lot of whites as well. You have to understand that Second World War and all that. They took whites out like there was no tomorrow, and saw many of them as animals and savages, and lesser than as well.
Mhm.
The ruling class, and you can break it down from the royal families to all that. The ruling class have been savage in Europe. They've been savage on themselves, and God knows they've been savage on others.
Look at what they did to Dresden. I mean, just read that story, bro. And that's that's their own.
And then look at the Russians. I mean, there are those who say the Russians are still counting their dead from the Second World War. So, I mean, the numbers, they say they've undercounted the numbers by 20, 30 million. That's what people are saying. I have no way to prove this now, but yet this is what they're saying. I mean, whole towns and villages disappeared. Battle of Leningrad. I mean, it just I don't know, man. So they've been pure savages on everything that they've gone into. It's in history's there. I mean, you just look throughout European history, 100 years war, the 30 years war. Let's look at World War I. Just look at the Battle of the Somme. That went on for months, where over 1 million people. I mean, just one battle, over 1 million casualties. I mean, what kind of?
Madeleine Albright famously said that a 500,000 dead Iraqi children, it was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, they say, I mean, this is what these people. It's
sociopaths, man.
I mean, they're killing. I mean, when the Roman Empire fell, and the Romans were trying to really settle some of these savage areas they considered the most savage areas, and you had one of your last black emperors of Rome, Septimus Severus, who died in England. In these conflicts trying to settle Germania and all these other areas that were just what they call the savage backwoods. They knew when these guys came to power, this shit was over. And basically for 1,000 years, these guys after the fall of Rome, you got your Dark Ages and all that shit. I mean, these guys were savages, man, for real. I mean, the only guys who settled them and just walked away from it were the Mongols. Mongols came there and beat them. And then the Great Khan died and they left. And ever since then, ever since the 12th century, these guys have been on a savage swath of just unbelievable killing that if you try to, bring up the numbers of dead, I think it damn near goes into the billions. It's ill. It's some ill shit.
Yeah.
If you look throughout history, it's very ill. Very, very ill, these guys. But they were beaten by the Mongols. And then Khan died. Kublai Khan, he passed on. And then they left.
Same thing happened to the Muslims. The Muslims, they after rulership moved north to Turkey, pretty much they got into a losing streak where they had to just pull back. They pulled back from Spain, Portugal, everywhere that Muslims were.
This shit's been ill. If you look at this history, it's been a chronicle of just unbelievable savagery. So, in the 12th century or 1066, when the Vikings came rolling through, that was it.
And the thing is, just to make this final point is, I read a book. I forgot the name of it. I think it's something about the savagery of Western men. I mean, it goes into it's just like the ISIS papers, like the ISIS papers goes deep into the psychology of white people and white men, why they violent, and I mean, I guess it goes back, and when they were in the caves, like they lived in a brutal, harsh environment, that's the reason why they have that conservative, brutish mindset compared to us. We came from a place of plenty, we're not, I'm not saying we're not less violent, but I'm just saying that in the sense that we
If you're using
are.
the manosphere as a benchmark.
Yeah, fuck your dead mother and all this kind of stuff. Jesus Christopher.
I mean,
Never heard anything like that.
Khalid Muhammad once said, like, when you've been enslaved by your slave master and then you've been colonized by your slave master, you take on his identity. So I think that's what happens to a lot of us over here.
Oh, I mean, I was looking at the journals of some of the Portuguese traders that had come into Africa in the 1490s, and they came into areas, that are now Angola. They rolled through areas, kind of. They were in West Africa, and they came rolling through, and they saw the country. They thought, first of all, you didn't have poverty like you see in areas. You didn't have it. You had plenty of gold. The Africans were they were very colorful and so forth. They did have a lot of Islam was rolling through there. They talked about how peaceful it was and how you could, during the day bazaars that they would have in the markets and shops that were open, they would, go and pray, and they would leave and come back, and they would have gold necklaces, ingots, everything sitting out that was for sale, and not one cash would be touched during that period. So they spoke about how peaceful they were, and you didn't even have to worry about crime. You had zero crime, and you could leave. They could leave your shop, go pray, come back, and not one piece of gold, not one item would be touched. And you come back, and people would go back to doing business. And they looked at this, and those the Portuguese, who looked at this were like, we can't believe how peaceful these guys were. And they and in their mindset, after a period of time, it became, okay, well, these guys are so peaceful and so kind of easygoing, and they're accepting of us. It's time for us to tear them out the frame and take what they have. And that's essentially what happened. And in 1497 or whatever, they were there as his friends. In 1506, they came back and attacked. And that's how Angola and some of the other Lusophone states came into being. And it's been that way ever since. But that's what happened, man. But you had Portuguese travelers and so forth that chronicle this stuff that I was reading and looking at this. These are all books that you have in Brazil and so forth that got burned up in the libraries. But yeah, it showed you that you were not a violent, savage, animalistic people. That was lies. In fact, you were very learned. Many were of most were of Muslim descent. So they read the Quran and they did a lot of writings, and a lot of historical notes. So these were learned people, as opposed to the lies that you've gotten from the West, that these were savages and uneducated. No, these people, in fact, were more educated than the Europeans were.
Mathematics came out of Africa.
Which you didn't know, and Timbuktu and so forth. And you see these savages go, "Oh no, Timbuktu was controlled by white." It's like, yeah, okay, it's just like Africans built the Stonehenge, right? Okay, so they didn't build Stonehenge, and then how the hell are you saying here that these guys here that didn't do this, the whites came there and did it? I mean, what are you guys, insane? I mean, it's just it's ridiculous, the arguments that these savages have. But at the end of the day, you start to read history and you look at a lot of the notes and stuff of the travelers, of the people that sailed with Magellan and sailed with Vasco da Gama and these other people, and you read what they saw in Africa during that period, and it's unbelievable. So that's why they want to hide a lot of that. But these guys chronicled this stuff, and they had to learn the patois, these different languages, because they were dealing with these people. They had a different view of it. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it there.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible, and hit the notification bell to get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. including those posted on the community tab. Shalom.